Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to our Tawheed Halaqah. This is the 63rd Tawheed Halaqah, going through Professor Muhammad al-Masri's Kitab At Tawheed. The date is the 5th of January 2026. We are on volume 3. We are part 8 of this volume, page 237, and this is the introduction for this section. So chapter 1 from part 8 of volume 3. And so I'll read from the text now. In the previous chapter, we concluded upon the reality that the nature of Islamic Tawheed is essentially but one simple concept, namely that the testimonial that there is no God but Allah. Here this means the affirmation that all attributes of divinity, al-uluhiyya, are solely for Allah, the exalted and majestic. Coupled with this is the categorical denial that any aspect of uluhiyya is attributed to anyone or anything except Allah. However, despite this, the foundational myths and ideas of the mushrikeen are numerous. They are intertwined, often complex, despite being inconsistent and fundamentally contradictory. Given this, the scholars may need to provide additional clarification by way of categorizing Tawheed into different types of subdivisions in order to address the various forms and guises that shirk may take. Moreover, by doing this, it provides many to make it. By doing this, it provides. I think there's a sorry. This version, I think, I need to send it to translate. There's a linguistic issues there. But anyway, it's just legible. Moreover, by doing this, it provides help to guide people away from the multitude of overlapping darkness to which shirk is shrouded into the single light of Tawheed. Accordingly, we may provide...
The meaning of that is just that you don't need to divide. That's a symbol. There's no deity. Any entity who have any divine attribute is one who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the universe, the necessity existing. That's the only one. Any attribution, any deity to anybody else is false, is an imagination, is absolutely wrong. It doesn't exist really, number one. And any such attribution must be rejected staunchly. That's it. That's mean la ilaha illallah. But because various types of attribution and attributes which people do not recognize if it is shirk or tawheed or something like that, it needs to be fleshed out. Because the complexity of the various types of shirk, most clearly, that comes clearly when the issues of sovereignty and legislation comes. For example, the hadith of Adi ibn Hatim, which will come later, obviously, is that when he entered the Prophet and he has and he heard him reading اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم, they adopted or made their scholars and monks and so on lords beside Allah and the Messiah, even the son of Mary. And they have commanded not to worship any except one divine being, one divinity only. He said, we did not worship them, meaning the monks and scribes. He said they worship, they don't deny. He says divine, really, full divine. That's not an issue. But we did not worship them. The Messiah Allah told him, don't they make halal haram and haram in a simple language that such a simple man understand? Did not say legislate from their own sovereignty and things like that. Didn't they make halal haram and haram? Say yes, they do. Say this is their worship. So this is even for a Christian who should be more sophisticated than Arab pagans, is not in his mind that this is related to divinity. You see, this needs to be fleshed out and clarified. And that's the reason. This complicated sentence you just read should have been expanded a little bit. I will do, inshallah, in the editing now. The editing is ongoing now. Okay. Inshallah, the final version, because I'm not intending to come back to that. This will flesh it out to justify that we condemn this triplet division of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Abdul Wahhab, Al-Wabiyya, Al-Huya, Asma' al-Sifat, yes, but we propose a more structured, well-defined division. Yeah. Okay. So that's it.
Okay. So just to recap, moreover, by doing this, it provides help to guide people away from the multitude of the overlapping darkness to which shirk is shrouded into the single light of Tawheed. Accordingly, we may therefore provide a categorization to Tawheed in the following manner. Number one, Tawheed al-Dhatiyya al-Ilahiyya. Monotheism as it relates to the divine essence and godhood. Some may refer to this as being Tawheed an-Nahiyya.
النية.
An-Niyya. Monotheism of existence. Number
Mhm.
2, Tawheed al-Khaliqiyya. Tawheed as it pertains to the matter of creation. This includes the aspect of creation itself, formation, shaping, and bringing into existence from non-existence.
Mhm.
Number 3, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, monotheism of lordship. Here there are 2 subdivisions: Tawheed al-Mulk wal-Tadbir wal-Tasarruf al-Taqwini,
Mhm.
monotheism as it pertains to sovereignty, management, and the universal control or cosmic control.
Mhm.
D, Tawheed al-Hakimiyyah wal-Tashrih, monotheism of governance and legislation, which is equivalent to above, to A above, which is was A probably the first one. Okay, Tashrih. Oh, anyways, I think to A above, the one right above. Okay. Interesting. Just as a side note, Taqwini was on a recent video that I mentioned earlier with Daniel Haqiqatu. They were talking specifically about Taqwiniya. Okay, so that concludes that chapter. So this is just as a so your provision is these 3 primary and additional 2 subdivisions is your definition of Tawheed?
This is subdivision, the correct one, not that one what Ibn Taymiyyah proposed.
Okay. All right. So chapter 2, root origin of shirk.
Because Ibn Taymiyyah, the main blunder that Ibn Taymiyyah starts called the Rububiyyah, what he means is actually Khaliqiyya, creator. That's what he means, which it contradicts the Arabic, the language meaning of the Arabic, and mess everything up. It contains that and so on, which is blatantly against the meaning of the word. Khaliqiyya belongs here to Ilah. And that's what the beginning of the demand, the beginning of collapse of the whole theory came from there. And the never-ending circular arguments or nonsensical arguments, as will be expanded more and more down the road.
Okay. So essentially what we're saying is by him not singling out khalq as an attribute and preferring rububiyyah, this is where
No, it's utterly wrong. It's not preferring. He's misunderstood that completely. He misunderstood completely. Completely. He is nowhere. If he would really had looked at the Tawheed al-Khaliqiyya is the issue of Khaliqiyya, creating your intrinsic independent power from nothing is completely different than Rububiyyah, sovereignty. And sovereignty, yes, emerged from being Khaliqiyya, but it is separate, and the types of shirk fall in that. It has to be addressed, and this has to be clarified with the 2 types. The type which has the cosmic action, and the other one is legislative and normative action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also will. So if Allah wills something to be created or to come in existence, nothing can stop it from happening. It immediately happens. But if He wills you to worship Him or to be good to your parents, the so-called normative or tashri'i or legislative will, then this is command to you, and you by your free will to have completed or failed to complete it, you will be accounted for that. That will not be immediately executed. Someone else has to execute it on divine order and suffer obviously the consequences of failing to obey the orders. That's the 2 subdivision of Rububiyyah. First one is related to Khaliqiyya and control the universe. Second one is, but he confused that, Rububiyyah essentially that. And the other one is just that, he never discussed legislating what Allah has not revealed. He said just applying what Allah didn't reveal or not ruling according is kufr. Yeah, that's true. But the one who does the legislation, what is he? He made himself a deity beside Allah, a Lord beside Allah. He missed that point. He missed the point. It's the same thing like Adi ibn Hadim missed, but in a more sophisticated way. Adi is much simpler, just straightforward, simple. Yeah, okay? That's the point.
Was it also because
clear after somebody the book because it's such a deep, it is simple point, but it's so deep, covered by so many issues and so on, especially the various types of shirk to a level that people are lost completely.
Is it also neglect because in an environment where it's implicit that you're ruling by Islam and the other side have creed issues, then is that a possible reason for neglect? So because
We are
every
not
Muslim,
we are not talking about his motivation. I think his
uh-huh,
motivation is that he's got confused and
uh-huh,
he want to hammer the Sufi mostly.
uh-huh.
Put the visit graves and so on.
So
That's the
that,
beginning
yeah,
of the disaster.
yeah. So basically, when a person sees a problem, that's when they start to make a rebuttal. And if there isn't a reason to rebuttal that, then it's out of your scope.
Yeah, that's it. Involved in these things. Plus also the issues of what they call Tawheed al-Asma al-Sifat, names and attributes of the divine being. Huh? That's essentially because the ancient mutakallimin and they're fighting with Ahl Hadith, who are usually simple-minded and trivial. They were about, should we do ta'wil? What does it mean, the hand of Allah? Does it mean really? Every time you say, oh, it's not jarh, it's not a body part. Allah cannot be divided in parts. Okay, jameel jiddan. What's it to say? We don't know the meaning and so on. And the Mutakallimin say, no, we know the meaning. خلقت بيدي, I created in a specific way of special attention, not just created, and things like that. That's the ta'wil meaning. And things like that. And mounting the throne, all of these things. Is the throne really created or just the divine attributes symbolized by the throne? Things like that. He want to turn that an issue of discussion of what's the nature of attributes and is it metaphoric or not metaphoric or partly or not partly, all of this. He want to turn it into a battlefield and attack everyone who's have his same Hanbali, Ahmad bin Hanbal point of view. What he does, he declares that to be part of Tawheed. So it's a major. It's not just issue of ijtihad and scholarly and philosophical issues. No, it's deeper. It's more important. It's Tawheed.
And you can make tabdi on it. And you can make tabdi on it, as they did today.
So that the attack against it, they are not doing Tawheed Asma Sifat as should be. They have some kind of shirk there. There's no shirk there. So it should not be Tawheed Hadith. And that's the reason it will be in the section about following the messenger. What the messenger brings, we take it. And we know the messenger is talking in Arabic and they're most eloquent. He uses the Arabic language. The Arabic language have metaphors, have symbolism, have various things, tools and devices. And this, we are liberty to use them if we think. But generally, it should be accepted as it is. And whatever comes in your imagination, you know Allah is different than that. If you see promoting with the throne, someone, a king sitting on a throne, okay, this comes in your imagination, but it should be to the common man. No problem if you can imagine this way, but Allah is not like that. Yes, that's easy enough. It should have been settled, the issue like that. They say, no, it must be mounting, but in a way we don't know, and made the issue so murky that the Mutakallimin defeated him, annihilated some of their arguments, and they terrorize the Mutakallimin. That's the motivation for Tawheed Asma al-Sifat. But this is secondary. The problem with Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah is he wanted to make that making a circumambulation around the grave is automatically shirk. You made the grave some kind of a divine being or the housing of a divine being. So because you're circumambulating the grave, then this is the Kaaba of your Kaaba. You're circulating Kaaba of whom? Of the one who will bury it. So you made him God by the circulating, which is, we know, is utterly false. It's nonsensical. Unless you have certain belief in him. He separated it from the belief. That's the problem. It will be all more detailed. If you ask about the motivation. Motivation may be very complicated historically, maybe psychologically, maybe someone who was abused as a child and reacts like that. All of these can happen. That's if you want to say the psychology and the history, psychological history, and things like that. But we don't. We're going to the issue of the final statement. Are they really derived from necessity of reason and the necessity of scripture or not? That's our issue. Ideal study of the objects there. Is the guy really, the only thing we may address sometimes, is he saying that really out of conviction or he has a certain hidden munafiq agenda? That's the only issue we sometimes address. I don't think Ibn Abdul Wahab or Ibn Taymiyyah is having an agenda. Some Syrian scholar here once in a video saying, oh, we have evidence that he's really a Jew and hidden Jew and a kafir. He wants to undermine Islam. That's nonsense. This approach is definitely nonsense. This definitely, like the same way some Islamists and others, and even Christians claim that, oh, Paul is actually an agent of the Romans, and they formed Christianity turned Christian into submissive citizen for the Roman Empire, because it's clearly more Roman Empire, the Holy Cow, nobody touched it, is appointed by God to rule the world. Christ rules only the other world, not here, and things like that. But I don't think he's an agent. Some, he was proposing to the daughter of the priest, but because he's not from the Levites, he is from Benjamin, they rejected him and he became full of hatred, etc., and then turned against them and used Christianity as a cover. I think this is also nonsense, should you discount it. I think the man is really motivated internally by suffering, by his character himself, and the suffering in young years, because it seemed to be there's a narration. Let me mention that just now, just for sweetening. This is a side story, anecdote. There's a narration early in Apocrypha, not in the main books, and not because he's known to be from Tarsus, according to the current scripture. But it seems to be he's not born there. It seems to be there's another narration. I have to find where it is in their books, but I heard it in a video that he was born in Galilee. And after that, his birth, roughly maybe he was 7 to 10 years old. There was a rebellion in Galilee. That's essentially must be before Christ, around that time. And then the Roman, as usual, smashed it down and crucified thousands of people along the road and moved people from their own village and expelled them. His family, him as a child, were expelled and were moved to the north toward, they forced to go out of Palestine. They emptied certain villages for military purposes. And you know how the Roman were. They're brutal and systematic they were. And I speculate that the young boy see this crucifixion. He's deeply injured internally. He's terrified about his appearance. And they settled in Tarsus. His father is a tent maker, and he became a tent maker. But all these appearances shocked him deeply. How much is evil in the universe. And possibly in his young years, he joined some of these mystery religions like Monotheism and so on, who believe in two deities, the fight between good and evil. And Monotheism was widely spread in the empire. It could have even defeated Christianity if it didn't have a major fault. Not the neutral Aqidah. The major fault is they admit only men. Such a religion will never become a universal religion. You have to get men and women, families, societies to be, otherwise you'll never spread. But it was so spreading, we're competing with Christianity in early phases. Their belief is that Baal or whatever came as a bull, was sacrificed, the son of God was sacrificed to save humanity from the devil. You see the story? That's it. So he experimented with that, but his family was terrified because they're Jews, they're simple people, practicing Jew, and they sent him to study under Gamaliel, a member of Sanhedrin and the famous scholars for, that's my speculation, this part. But there's also a report that he was studied under Gamaliel. And Gamaliel was the foremost scholar in the first century. And they have very good reason to believe that he became Christian secret. He followed Isa secret, but he remained in the Sanhedrin. So one of the major mashayikh of the Jews has the best attacks against polytheism and kufr at that time. So he studied under him and became then extreme to the other side, extreme rabbinic and Jewish essentially. And that was persecuting the new Christian. But later on with the secular experience, most like an internal conflict or a lightning strike or something, he converted to Christianity and needed to sort his mind, but how to do it. And then the whole theory of saving the world from evil came back to his mind. And that's how it developed. He's neither a Jew who wants to take revenge on Jews, nor he is that's good to study in that case. How come that Paul is like that? That makes sense in that sense. But does not exonerate us from discussing his theory as it is at stand and refute it, independent of he's an agent of this or this or this or this. That's for study this man and how could he have such an enormous influence in Christianity. That's history and psychology. But ideological, what he's proposing is definitely not supported by what the other old Christian under the leadership of Yaqub, the brother of Christ, and the others, and so on. And that's what the Old Testament really, the main channel, all of them, despite all twisting and so on, the unity of Allah, and that all the messengers are slaves of Allah is very clear there without any doubt. So there's no justification in the scripture for this some kind of strange duality and for him using the word Son of God in his writing more than 200 times. While even the Gospel don't use that much. Gospel of Mark uses only in one place, maybe one in the title, which the title is not part of the Gospel anyway. This is the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That's the title of Mark, the current Mark, not the original Mark. And this is by the writer. They know it is not part of the Gospel. That's it. And in Luke, it's only, I think, in 3-4 places. And in Matthew, it's maybe 15 places. And the writing of Paul, more than 200 places. Obsession with the idea of Son of God. Adopted or divine, but it's clearly that he's wavering. Because in one place he says he's embodying the full Godhead. What does this mean? A very confusing word. Does it mean the God is in him and he's a full God and full man, or does it mean maybe metaphorical, that he has all the divine beauty and things like that radiate from him, something like that? But I think he inclined that he's somehow divine. That's definitely not what Christianity, Christ and the follower in Jerusalem were following. But just comment aside. That has to be refuted and discussed by itself. Independent of Paul is an agent or not. That's that I mean. So if you ask all the justification and so on, I'm not in justifying or exonerating. But that's what has happened with Ibn Taymiyyah. He got confused and so on, or appears to be got confused. Choose your pick. Many of his teachers in philosophy and so on were Jews, because there was Jewish center of scholarship in Harran. He was born in Harran first, and then they moved to Damascus. All of the Mongols and the attacks time were ongoing back and forth. Running away from the Mongols and settled in Damascus. So that's another study, which for me is not interesting. I don't care about it. What's his motivation or his not motivation? I assume he was confused and he made a mistakes. And gave Ahmad ibn Hanbal specifically and his school, because his family are Hanbali, and he is a Hanbali scholar, regarded as great Hanbali scholar himself. His father and his great-grandfather is one of the big Hanbali scholars. Yeah. He's the one who collected Muntaqa al-Akhbar, which is have been explained to a very explanatory note, a very good collection of hadith. His grandfather.
That's a
yeah. So I don't care about that. That's history. He might have justification, maybe have an excuse. That's not for me to decide. Allah Ta'ala will decide that. But is this point of view correct? Can we attack it based on necessity of reason and necessity of scripture? Yes, we can. And expose the fallacy there. Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 2, Origin of Shirk, page 239. In the previous volume of this research, we outlined many of the myths surrounding how the pre-Islamic Arabs abandoned Tawheed, falling into disaster of idol worship. More generally, though, the notion which permits the idea of al-uluhiyya, divinity being a genus or type with multiple members, is at the very core, the root of shirk, within the temporal world. Previously, we have exhaustively argued that the belief that making al-uluhiyya akin to humanity, namely viewing this as a general species that has multiple members who reproduce, bear offspring, vary in rank and status, e.g., with one being a leader, the other subordinate, one great, the other small, or one being a king, the other from the commonality, some members free, others being owners, is the belief which has been held by the vast majority of the simple mushrikeen, be that as it existed in ancient Egypt or Greece, or even among the common folk of India, as well as the mushrikeen from among the Arabs. Attributing offspring to Allah has been a deep-seated chronic disease that has spread among various groups of mushrikeen, extending also to the majority of Christians and factions of the Jews. Allah the Exalted in His Majesty has utterly refuted this ridiculous claim with various forms of rational and compelling textual evidence. Furthermore,
which we discussed earlier in the evidences.
Furthermore, He has without equivocation condemned this in multiple Quranic verses. Allah, the Almighty and Sublime, has said, and this one, just read the translation. This is from Surah 6, 100 to 101. Yet they made the jinn partners with Allah, though He created them, and without any true knowledge they attribute sons and daughters to Him. Glory be to Him. He is far higher than what they ascribe to Him, the Creator of the heavens and earth. How could He have children when He has no spouse, when He created all things and has full knowledge of all things? Next verse, 4171. People of the book, do not go excess in your religion, and don't say anything about Allah except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus son of Mary, was nothing more than a messenger of Allah, His word directed to Mary, a spirit from Him. So believe in Allah and His messenger, and do not speak of a trinity. Stop this. That is better for you. God is only one God. He is far above having a son. Everything in the heavens and earth belong to him, and he is the best one to trust. And the next verse, Surah 19, 34 to 35. Such was Jesus, son of Mary. This is a statement of the truth about which they are in doubt. It would not befit Allah to have a child. He is far above that. When he decrees something, he says only be, and it is. Condemnation in the Quranic text. In more than 20 verses of the glorious Quran, this condemnation is clear, concise, and utterly irrefutable. Among the verses where this is outlined are the following. They have asserted Allah has وقال اتخذ الله ولدا سبحانه بل له ما في السماوات والأرض كل له قانتون. They have asserted Allah has a child, may he be exalted. No, everything in the heavens and earth belong to him. Everything devoutly obeys his will. That's Surah 2, Baqarah 116. And the next verse, and say, praise belongs to Allah who has has not taken a child nor partner. In his rule, he is not so weak so as to need a protector. Proclaim his limitless greatness. And that's 17:111. They say Allah has children. May he be exalted. He is self-sufficient, everything. He is a self-sufficient one. Everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to him. You have no authority to say this. How dare you say things about Allah without any knowledge? And that's 1068. It warns those people who assert Allah has offspring, and that's 18:4. Next verse, from 1988 to 93. The disbelievers say the Lord of mercy has offspring. How terrible is this thing you assert? It almost causes the heavens to be torn apart, the earth to split asunder, the mountains to crumble to pieces, that they attribute offspring to the Lord of mercy. It does not fit the Lord of mercy to have offspring. There is no one in the heavens or earth who will not come to the Lord of mercy as a servant. And the next verse, 21:26, and they say the Lord of mercy has taken offspring for himself. May he be exalted. No, they are only his honored servants. And the next verse is 23:91. Allah has never had a child, nor is there any God beside him. If there were, each God would have taken his creation aside and tried to overcome the other. May Allah be exalted above what they describe.
مسألة التمانع. Yeah.
Next verse. It is he who has control over the heavens and earth and has no offspring. No one shares control with him, and who created all things and made them to an exact measure. 39:2. Next one, 43 to 81. 43, verse 81. Say, Prophet, if the Lord of mercy truly had offspring, I would be the first to worship them. Number 39:4. Allah could have chosen any of his creation if he willed for offspring, but he is far above this. He is the one, the Almighty. Next, next paragraph. This verse, together with those which preceded it, applies generally to anyone who attributes offspring to Allah, whether that be the Christians who claim that Christ is the Son of God and that the Holy Spirit proceeded from God, or the Arab mushrikeen who said that the angels are the daughters of Allah. It also applies to the philosophers who spoke of the terms generation, emanation, or proceeding of intellects and souls from the first intellect, whether that be all at once in a gradual fashion or by way of or not of an intermediary. The specific address to the Arab mushrikeen. The verses which follow are specific addresses to the Arab mushrikeen, those who said that the angels were the daughters of Allah and that their mothers were from the stock of the nobility of the jinn, as has been set out exhaustively in the previous volume. Note that Allah the Almighty and Exalted says, and this is from 1740, What? Has your Lord favored you people with sons and taken daughters for himself from the angel? What a monstrous thing for you to say. Next, 37, 150 to 152 coming up. Did we create the heavens as females while they were watching? No, indeed. It is one of their lies when they say Allah has begotten. How they lie. Next verse, 43:16. Has he taken daughters for himself and favored you with sons? And then 43:19. They considered the angels and Allah's servants to be female. Did they witness their creation? Their claim will be put on record and they will be questioned about it. Next one is 37:158. They claim that he has kinship with the jinn, yet the jinn themselves know that they will be brought before him. 72:3. And that he exalted be the glory of our Lord, has neither spouse nor child. One should seriously ponder over the import of these blessed verses. Indeed, isn't it remarkable that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rarely recites these verses in his supposed comprehensive study to establish the confused, ill-disciplined
Because it doesn't fit that either than under Rububiyyah. He fitted under Uluhiyyah, it doesn't fit under Uluhiyyah. Because some of them have been never worshipped in the sense he defined as love and so on, like the jinn. People hate them and they are afraid of them. If they attribute them that they can run away from Allah and you need to give them sacrifice to avert their evil, you are mushrik also. So it's just he's at a complete loss. His division is just absolutely deficient. Yeah. Yes, it's deficient. He should have had at least something like shirk with that. Shirk in existence or there's a major part. Most shirk in the world, according to that, if you check all shirk in the world, comes from shirk in that, actually. Most will come from that. Not from the activities later based on that. But if he has looked at that, it will all his theory about circumventing the graves and visiting the graves will evaporate, will finish. He blinded himself or got blinded or intended to be blinded. We don't care about what's happened, but that's what has happened. That's what's clearly in front of him. Yeah, carry on.
One should seriously, so just out of interest, I mean, with Isa alayhi salam, obviously they believe in divine essence.
Yeah, divine essence. That's not Isa, actually, the Messiah, the Christ himself. Not Isa as the human Isa.
Yeah,
but the Christ is, and they merged together in a mysterious way.
So he just simply didn't address this issue because obviously that's quite a significant one. I mean, it didn't trigger any discourse around the issue of that.
Which one is
Ibn Taymiyyah, the fact that
he completely as if it doesn't exist.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, did he circumvent it?
Barely mentioned that the Mushrikeen of Arab worship all these deities as the daughters of Allah. He barely mentioned that.
But in terms of Isa alayhi salam, in terms of what is the shirk of the Christians, has he expressed that it's because of divinity of?
No, the ayah is clear and he doesn't.
He didn't necessarily articulate it separately.
He does not got in that area at all. Maybe put it under Asma and Sifat.
Okay.
Maybe just casually. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's a major part. It should have been the first one.
Yes.
Shirk al-Niyyah, the divine essence. There's no divine essence. Only one divine being.
Yes, intrinsic. No one can be a Muslim who has that belief, so it should be singled out. One should seriously ponder over the import of these blessed verses. Indeed, isn't it remarkable that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rarely cites these verses in his supposed comprehensive surveys to establish the confused, ill-disciplined, tripartite division of Tawheed, namely Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat. Were these verses missing from his copy of the Quran? Surely not. That's sarcasm. For the Arabs of the north, the Adonite Arabs, particularly the tribe of the Quraysh, they had several false deities, most of whom were feminine. These included Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Al-Manat, as well as others. As previously explained, they had believed these supposed deities to be angels, the angels being the daughters of Allah. They may have even believed in some form of kinship, kinship or marriage relationship between Allah and the jinn. Allah is
marriage means in-law relationship. Yeah.
Allah is far exalted above the falsity of their absurd claims. However, given their historical connection to the Tawheed of Ibrahim, peace be upon him, they did not believe in what they viewed as a central supreme God, Allah the Exalted. Hence, they gave the attribution of foremost of creation and management of the universe to Allah, as they considered him the chief of the gods, or akin to the leader of the tribes of the gods, with him as the ultimate father. Alternatively, they may have viewed him too as being the most capable of the plethora of gods, or even the one who had the most noble of attributes, as is shown from the Quranic record of debates with them. That utterly demolished their false contradictory beliefs. In that respect, they are similar to the mushrikeen who have existed in various parts of the world. The exception here is their belief that Allah, the central and supreme deity, was viewed as chief and greatest of gods, thereby holding a higher status as compared to other societies born of shirk. Indeed, we have argued that they attribute most of creation and the management of the universe to Allah the Exalted, but critically, not all of it. Nor did they attribute exclusive control to Allah the Exalted, as we have definitely proven in this present work with irrefutable evidence. Hasty, incomplete, ill-conceived, with a failure to consider all necessary texts, reports, and narratives, the tripartite definition stemming from Imam Ibn Taymiyyah has caused countless problems. This blindness of insight also bedeviled those who had followed Ibn Taymiyyah in his stead, namely the renegade and rebel, the Khariji, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. They made a cataclysmic blunder in believing that the mushrikeen acknowledged what Ibn Taymiyyah misdefined as Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. That was further compounded by the error in arguing that shirk of the mushrikeen solely lay within the domain of what they termed Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. Errors such as this are grave, indeed abhorrent, representing a serious and monumental mistake that has led to enormous confusion and the formation of the tripartite definition for which Allah has revealed no authority. Notwithstanding this, it has also caused disruption in the concept of al-uluhiyyah, the matter for which creation itself was brought into existence, distorting the very concept of Tawheed, presenting it as mutilated, disfigured, and disfigured, and unstable version, befogging the minds of its adherents. Its focus upon a collection of secondary matters, some of which would be oddly unassuming if they weren't so tragic. Discussions about concerning matters of seeking intercession, whether the dead can hear the
What we're
living.
discussing here, yeah, Shafa and so on. Yeah. Extremely secondary. And they went to become an issue of divinity and things like that, which I thought is absurd. Yeah, carry on.
Discussions abound concerning the matters of seeking intercession, whether the dead can hear the living. Others are born of outright fanaticism, like the obsession over graves, trees, sacred sites, relics, and the like. Other terrifying consequences stem from this, the worst of which is leveling the accusation upon the majority of Muslims, the people who face the Qibla, accusing them of shirk and kufr, stating that they are, for all intents and purposes, outside the fold of Islam. With that justification, they have wielded the sword against Muslims, justifying their execution with the utmost brutality, devoid of any mercy or even compassion. This in itself is an act of kufr, as per the hadith of reviling a Muslim is a sin, fighting him is kufr. Most of this we have delineated. The remainder will be outlined in due course. Removing this gross and erroneous understandings has been the major prompt for the research and writing of this present series of books. We ask Allah for success. There is no other God except Him. In Him we trust, and by His support and mercy we are supported. This concludes this chapter. So your statement about the killing, reviling a Muslim is a sin, fighting him is a kufr. That hadith.
That's hadith.
Yeah, your understanding of that is that a literal like kufr, or is it just gravity?
No, because he mentioned fisq. Fisq and kufr. Kufr is more generally assumed to be higher than fisq.
But the act of killing a Muslim, I mean, it's still sin, or is it falls into kufr?
It is sin of the level kufr. That's it. The hadith is clear. Because giving two things, reviling, سباب المسلم فسوق, and fighting him is kufr. Yeah, that's clear.
Okay, but it's clear because there's a distinction made between the two acts.
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear.
Okay.
Because the first one is actually the word used is not ma'asiyah or sin in the simple way. They use the fisk. Fisk is also rebellious sin. It's really a heavy sin, usually the level of kabira at least. It could be also kufr. Iblis is fasiq also, and kafir.
Because it's an act. I mean, obviously, it's something that's going to be decided.
Even this name is actually, and this is what Kribt also in the books of Aqa'id, Tahawiyah, and so on say. They call the one who is saying but not kafir. They call him fasiq milli. Fasiq belonging to the millah still. It should be asi milli, not fasiq. In that context, should be called asi milli. Fasiq, the word fasiq cover both sinful rebellion, which is of the level of kufr. For example, the case of Iblis, fasaq an amr rabbi, he rebelled against his Lord's command. Iblis aba wastakbara wa kana min al-kafir. He rejected and was arrogant, not willing to prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and submit to his command, even if he didn't understand it or understand whatever motivation. You have no business to bring your motivation that I am better him or less than him. It's irrelevant what you are. Divine command, you submit, you obey, even if you don't like it. And he was a kafir because of that. And was the biggest kufr. So that's it. So these words, I think, even later were not put in the right thing. And about Adam, there was never mention of any fiscal kufr. What was? Asa Adam Rabbahu fagawa. He disobeyed his Lord, so he got astray.
The fisk is rebellious disobedience.
Yeah.
Asi is just a sin.
Fisk, like the original language of Hishek, it is when a nut, you break the nut. Breaking, rebelling. And some people think that the pistachio, which is in Arabic called fustuq, is coming from fustuq. I think that he maybe something else. That's linguistic study. It's irrelevant. The Sharia clearly specifies that. It's very cautiously the ayah about don't backbite each other and so on. Say, don't spy. If you do that, then it is a kind of fusuq in you. So then you are not fasiq. Fusuqum bikum. Quran is very precise, but you have to read it with open eyes, not with Ibn Taymiyyah's eyes or the one of Tahawiyah. No, it has to be read again because it has been mutilated.
And also with the Fasiq Zalim Kafir in Surah Ma'idah, that's also
Zalim could be a level of kafir. يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. ظلم in Arabic is taking someone else's rights, and any shirk, they are taking Allah's right to be worshipped alone. That's his absolute right. So it's dhulm. You are committing injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, violating your obligation of not transgressing your limits of becoming mu'tadi, being aggressive. You are aggressive. That's dhulm. A shirk is a great dhulm. But
kufr. So, for example, some people use, was it Ibn Tawus, famously Ibn Tawus, not Ibn Abbas, saying about kufr, do not kufr. So
that's Ibn Tawus. That's not even Ibn Abbas.
Yeah. But that's in legislation. But in terms of the use of the word kufr, so for example, laysa minna is not one of us. That doesn't necessarily.
No, that's a wa'id. You have to clarify what's laysa minna. Is it completely out of Islam or not? Yeah.
And just
I mean, ليس بمؤمن is not necessarily kafir. It is just simply, this proves you clearly that someone who is, you cannot call him, he's a mu'min. If you call someone, say, this man is not an American, does not mean that he's fighting the American enemy of America. Maybe he's neutral, living in another country who has no relation to America. If you're discussing about hostility, say, this man is not an American. Maybe he's a foreigner, but he's not a warrior. So it's very obvious for language, but people just get stuck. ليس منا from the real mu'minin, real Muslimin. But maybe minna by name or appearance. Maybe he was a munafiq kind of kafir, but belong to us externally, but internally he is not. These are all very complicated things left to Yawm al-Qiyamah. But if you say ليس منا, this is definitely is a lack in lack in Iman and lack in true Islam. No doubt about that. من غشنا فليس منا. No doubt about that. Who cheat us is not one of us, definitely. Without being necessarily kafir.
And this hadith,
Could be
because
kafir, could be a sinner, could be many things, but definitely he was not in good standing. Because a standard Muslim, the Messenger of Allah, one of them, the head of them, are at least fulfilling the minimum, or even more for the Messenger of Allah and the best Sahaba, is that they avoid every prohibition and they do every obligation. That's the minimum. If that's not the case, then bye-bye. Then you are not from this class. You're from a lower class. Is it completely low, the opposite, the contradiction? Not necessary. So between kufr and iman, it is not like contradiction, it is opposition, opposite. In between, there are many scales. If you look at that, don't get confused by that. That will save you from such conclusion. It needs a bit of deeper rational consideration. Is iman and kufr contradictory or opposing? No. Opposing things or contradictory things. Contradictory, they cannot be together or disappear together. But opposing things, they cannot be together, but they can both miss. There's something in between.
This hadith
like black and white. Black and white are not contradiction. They're opposing things. Because something cannot be black and white at the same time. That would be contradiction by putting them together. But something could be red. It's neither black nor white. In between.
So this hadith, it would have to be tawatur for it to be considered.
It is mutawatir. Okay. It's mutawatir. It's from 6 Sahaba.
Okay, wow.
Well, also the ayah, who kills a believer intentionally is ending in hellfire forever, is a threat. And many other things. We don't need to argue about that. Killing is murder is extreme case. And the other ayahs, generally, even all nafs which are prohibited, which have no clear license and evidence from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you can kill. That will get you to the level of shirk. And so on. But there's a complicated issue of the various levels who is out of order of Islam. And the more they discuss that, the more they make it confused and they open the door for ma'asiyah and shirk and kufr ultimately. So this Ibn Tawus making this blunder, kufr duna kufr, is trying to escape from the implication that the rulers, because that's about the rulers, that's all about the rulers and the judges, bribable judges, that they are still within the fold of Islam. And attempt to get that. It is kufr, yeah, because the ayah is clear. You cannot deny the ayah. Kufr, dhulm, fisk, no doubt about that. But what about these rulers? Because the people had the feeling if it is kufr of the level of shirk and being outfold of Islam, then they cannot be left. They must be fought and killed right away. But the people failed to do that, or they were subdued by the sword, and some scholars were afraid, some scholars were cooperating with them, and so on. So to make things a little bit, to save yourself from being cornered, you say kufr duna kufr. That's Ibn Tawus, not Ibn Abbas. Not even his father, Tawus. They confused that ruler could be fought for other reasons, just plain kufr, which is everyone agree about it completely. They failed. Because the hadith of fighting deviant rulers and exterminating them and all these things were they almost like in the undercurrent. They were in the underground. Nobody dared saying them publicly, otherwise they would get killed. I mentioned the story somewhere. I don't know, was it in Tafsir or so, that Sharik al-Qadi, one of the major scholars of his time, the time of Hadi, Mahdi, and Harun, and so on, were almost killed by the Mahdi because of the hadith. And initially he tried to get away by tricks and so on, by using mincing words, but ultimately he was caught. And then he was expelled out of from the audience of the Mahdi. And then when the minister saw something of Ibn al-Fadl, met him say, run away anywhere you can. He already now you should be killed now. He's framing a case of Zandaqa, that you are Zindiq, that you are following the Majus and so on. And he will kill you. Just escape. And Sharik escaped. They remained several years in hiding. So they mean these things, yeah, situation. People have to get to the history and clean it again from the mess you read it in the books glorifying Islamic history. We started that, starting with Muawiyah, and we'll follow with the others, inshallah, bit by bit. It's not a one issue, but Muawiyah, especially because they pure Sahabi and so on, ijtihad, that's the reason. After that, khalas, if this idol is demolished, all the other one is even worse than him or equal, it becomes clear.
Yeah, they don't have any special protection anyway.
Yeah.
So plus
alleged special protection, which they created also ex nihilo.
Yeah,
is not what the Quran says. And yeah, anyway. But this is studying their motivation. I don't care about studying their motivation. In that case, the motivation is very clear. They have to justify their failure to stand firm, or they have to, they are confused about that if the ruler is reaching the level of kufr or violating the fundamental principle which make him a ruler and commit a clear fisk publicly and commanding against Sharia, that he has to be removed. How to remove? That's a very structured process. They thought that the only way is that if it's kufr, he cannot be there. That's the only thing which terminates him. That's the mistake. So they need to construct something about kufr. And when it is clearly something is doing it's kufr, like when one of the tabi'in said, when they were discussing with some Abadi about it, tell him, it said, they said this is these rulers, yeah, they are not only what Allah has revealed. He is admitting that this is so clear. Nobody is denying that. But this is kufr duna kufr. They said to him, now you are afraid. You are afraid to tell the truth. That's the reason you are turning away from it and say, no, I'm not worthy of blame. You are worthy of blame, because if you believe it's real kufr, why are you not fighting against them? So you think it's the only kufr justify fighting. It's the same mistake. It's the same mistake. Obviously, it's not transmitted what the Abadi respond to him. Maybe say we believe that we can fight them and they're soldiers. But the Abadi point of view is not that the whole Ummah is kafir, because they may be under pressure, they may be, but the one cooperating with the ruler, his camp, the camp of the ruler, they've been fighting for him, his intelligence, the people supporting him, etc. They are kafir with him. But we may not be able to fight them then, we fight them or separate in mountains, a mountain of Algeria, a mountain of Oman. That's the Abadi point of view, which is much more reasonable than Abu Zayd's point of view. But this is another soul story. We don't want to go to it. This is in Muhasabat al-Hukam and other things we'll address that. It's already addressed in part, but we'll address it more thoroughly based on all the development in the second edition of these books, which will come soon, inshallah. So that's what we have. That's what we have. Unfortunately, the same with Christianity. If you go there, if you can just weed out what the poisonous effect of Paul, but the problem he's the major one for all Christianity remaining, especially after the World Council of Nicaea. The remaining few others who rejected Paul continue rejecting until Islam came, and they were all absorbed in Islam. So I don't think any one of them remained after that. Usually in Arab-speaking, Semitic-speaking, deep in Arabia, far away in the margin. But in the main land of Christianity, it is current Turkey, Asia Minor, all Europe, Egypt, all to Abyssinian, so all of them, even India, Armenia, all of these are essentially Pauline. Even if they have between them two major factions, the one who believe that Christ is having one nature and one will, and the others who they have two nature and two will. It doesn't make much difference. That's has been discussed later in the conference of Chalcedonia, and the Egyptian and the Abyssinian and the Indian following that church, and the Armenian refused that. Said no. There is only one nature and one will, and they insisted that until today. They were persecuted by the other guys, because the other guys have the main power in the empire. But other extremes who were extreme Paulian, who became dualists, like Marcion, they migrated far into in Persia, because they can easily synchronize with the dualists there. And from there, then other developments like Mani and so on, all of them are actually extreme Christian in the dualistic direction. Clear dualism. The good God and the bad God. Ahura Mazda and but not the same with the Majus. The Majus is more a structured religion. This is just like a basic aqidah with few rituals, which mostly smell Christian, but not really Christian, not even Pauline Christian. So Paul is responsible for all this mess. So it had to be scrutinized. They started, some now people started scrutinizing. Even in 10 past, people started scrutinizing. But he's the real disease. Muawiyah almost came like that, but luckily it didn't go to the fundamental of creeds, but went to the matter of governance. Governance is a fundamental part of Islam also. So it almost mutilated governance in Islam. And that's the reason all governance after that until today, until the so-called Khilafah collapsed in 1923 or 24, until that, it was 23 or 24? 24. Okay.
3rd of March 24.
March 24. So nominally, it went before. But
1858, the penal law was changed.
Changed in favor of Abdul Majid. So it's almost like 3/4 of a century before it has gone. Even the nominal one, bad one, is finished there. The rest is just and they started then Turanic nationalism and so on, converting Arab to Turkish by force. The massacre they did to Armenian is done by the Turani, not Muslim. Muslim not responsible. But Erdogan does not have the courage to admit that and say it is. If he said that, or the Republican Party there will rebel against him and move the people, and there's still a secular, a strong secular minority in Turkey, and he doesn't have the courage to confront them. But if you want to confront them, you have to say that this is all these extreme Turkish nationalists, and you have to burn the body of Ataturk. Will he dare doing that? Naturally not.
No, they're even emboldened at mocking people for Salah. They just reenacted. They're just mocking.
Yeah. They will have counterlash. Yeah, this type of nationalism, extreme nationalism, is almost as worse than the German Nazi.
Okay. Continue. So chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 3.
But I say this is mostly historical issues. Our issues get the ideological issues on firm base.
Okay. Chapter 3, page 246. Tawheed relating to the divine entity. Tawheed al-Dhat. Monotheism, or oneness of the divine essence, constitutes the foremost and most fundamental category of Tawheed. It is the firm belief that Allah, exalted and glorified, is uniquely necessary in his existence, wajib al-wujud, entirely self-sufficient by virtue of his essence, ghani bi-dhatihi. He is the awwal, the first, and the akhir, the last, al-zahir, the manifest, and al-batin, the hidden. He alone is the first, with nothing preceding him, pre-eternal, ancient, existing without preceding all times and eras. He is also the last, with nothing following him, everlasting, enduring forever without end. He did not originate from anything, nor does anything originate from him. He is not a member of a species or genus, for there is no such thing as a divine species or genus, let alone any concept of a race of gods. He is a uniquely divine being, singular in his essence. He is Al-Hayy, the ever-living, Al-Qayyum, the self-sustaining sustainer of all existence, and he is Al-Haq, Al-Mubin, the absolute truth. He is omnipotent, meaning he is capable of all things, omniscient, meaning his knowledge encompasses all things. He knows what has been, what is, what can potentially be, and what will not be, if it were to exist, how it would unfold. But if it were to exist, how it would unfold. He is the doer of what he wills, acting as he pleases, freely choosing by an absolute will that is unrestricted by any limitation or condition, except those which he has imposed upon himself or stipulated upon himself. He is the creator of all things, who has measured and decreed their realities, فَقَدَّرَهُ تَقْدِيرًا, in precise proportions. He is Rabb, the Lord, and master of all things, and their Malik, final King. Sovereign.
Sovereign, yeah.
He is Sayyid al-Mutlaq, the absolute master, exercising command and governance over all creation with his orders and prohibitions. He is described by every attribute of perfection, beauty, and majesty. There is no Lord besides him, nor any deity worthy of worship other than him. All of this is an established truth in its essence, requiring unequivocal belief with absolute certainty, free from any doubt. However, mere contradiction alone is not sufficient. It is also necessary to affirm this truth verbally, to articulate this affirmation, and to submit oneself in acknowledgement and surrender. This submission and acknowledgement must be done not only because it is intrinsically true, and by Allah it certainly is, but also as an act of devotion and drawing closer to Allah. Indeed, it is obligatory to combine these aspects, to affirm, to articulate this affirmation, and to adhere to its implications as acts of worship and devotion to Allah. This transforms certainty from being a mere intellectual or philosophical conviction, an acknowledgement of theoretical truth or abstract philosophical propositions, with no direct connection to religion or spirituality, and of no value in the hereafter, into iman shari, religious legitimate faith. Such iman constitutes ibadah, entailing specific obligations and practices defined by the creed itself. This religious faith is the desired goal. It gives human existence its meaning, and beyond that, it serves as the path to salvation in the hereafter. Without it, existence becomes meaningless, an empty life culminating in a fall into an abyss, as described in the Quran. وما أدراك وما أدراك ما هي. What will explain to you what it is? Narun Hamia, a blazing fire. Quran 101, 10 to 11. So here you said ibadah, such iman constitutes ibadah. So in your new framing of that, constitutes enslavement or complete submission.
We'll edit inshallah. We making the terms more precise, because here they made the mistake that we did not really benefit from the full meaning of the Arab abada, fa'buduni, fa'bud. We did not benefit from the full meaning, say the linguistic meaning of little importance, like in the case of ilah. In ilah, we know it was a little importance until the Quran defined it. The same here, but here the Quran did not make any new definition of that. Just use it as it is, and it is the meaning: enslave yourself. Lower yourself completely, recognize him the absolute sovereign. But we'll make it more precise, inshallah, next edition. Okay. But at least we are one step further than the Wahhabi. Actually, they don't discuss that at all. If it's discussed, they discuss like a beginning of names and attributes. That's all what they get there. That's all what they get there. Which is a blunder. This should be the foundation. That part should be really Tawheed as that. There's only one divine entity. There's no genus, no species, no genus, no tribe, nothing, and only one divine entity. There's no two types, one good and one evil. It doesn't exist.
That's why they can get away with such ridiculous statements to say that the shirk of the peoples on going to the graves is equivalent to the mushrikeen or worse.
Yeah,
they actually say that. Retarded.
Yeah.
All of this is established as a necessity through clear and definitive rational and innate proofs, even before the advent of revelation. We previously touched upon a small portion of these proofs, demonstrating that this matter is irrational and evidentiary beyond doubt. One quick one. So, Tawheed al-Dhat, obviously, Shaitan hasn't fall foul of that, but it's sovereignty that he
definitely not. No, definitely.
Yeah, because he's seen it all.
And he's rebelled, so that's his fault. So that says he acknowledges it's called Allah Rabbi, but he is not complying with that, because he's a free agent. A free agent can acknowledge something. Like, for example, a doctor may acknowledge very well that smoking is bad, and still he smokes. He cannot get himself to get there. So, no, I can manage it. I know how to proportion it and things like that. That's exactly. That's the nature of free will, that you can go against your best knowledge, because you are finite, limited being. If you have and the infinite being will never go against his own knowledge, will never will something which is impossible and so on. No. We never will a son because that's an impossibility and there's no need for a son. This is a construction, the creation, to keep the creation ongoing generation after generation. If it's designed not to stay eternally, like in the next life, then it's there, the design is different, that you can't stay. And that's the reason they will not. They don't need to have to procreate there. They are happy like that.
There's a hadith
not
to that
to
effect, isn't
expect.
it?
The instinct to procreate and so on most likely will be differently. And things like that.
I don't know how strong that narration is, but I remember in Al-Malaki he mentions about that.
If someone wishes in Akhirah, still human may wish, maybe, but independent of that, that's definitely will not apply to the divine one, who's absolutely eternal, and he knows that with absolute certainty. So the traces of the limited nature remains there.
Okay. All of this is established as necessity through clear, definitive, rational, and innate proofs even before the advent of revelation. We previously touched upon a small proportion of these proofs, demonstrating that this matter is rational and evidentially beyond doubt. The Sharia subsequently arrived to confirm, remind, and elucidate these truths, transforming them from mere affirmations of reality, philosophical, rational, or logical necessities into aqa'id al-sharia, religious doctrines that serve as acts of devotion to Allah, expressed through belief and action in accordance with them. This is exemplified in the divine clarification found in verses such as in 112, 124, قل هو Surah Ikhlas, قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Say he is one, Allah the one. Say he is Allah the one, Allah the eternal. He begot no one, nor was he begotten, no one is comparable to him. And 57:3, he is the first and the last, the outer and the inner. He has knowledge of all things. And Surah Al Imran, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Allah, there is no God but Him, the ever living, the ever watchful. Surah 3:2. And from 4:136, O you who believe in Allah and His Messenger, and in the scripture He sent down to His Messenger, as well as what He sent down before. Anyone who does not believe in Allah, His angels, His scriptures, His messengers, and the last day has gone far, far astray. All forms of Tawheed ultimately derive from this foundational principle. The classification of its aspects into distinct categories is not due to any essential separation, but is rather a practical method for facilitating its study and addressing the various distinct forms of shirk that manifest opposing each category. This categorization, which forms the primary subject of this chapter, does not arise from an imagined division, undefined terminologies, or abstract claims devoid of precision or evidence. Rather, it is grounded in two key sources, namely a comprehensive inductive study of the verses of the Quran, supported by rigorously authenticated texts from the prophetic Sunnah. Secondly, through a thorough and critical examination of the beliefs of the pre-Islamic Arabs, as well as the creeds and religions of other nations and peoples, particularly those during the period when the Quran was revealed, as it addressed and engaged with them. This has been detailed earlier and will be elaborated upon further in the remaining sections of this treatise to an exhaustive degree. Tawheed al-Dhat, Tawheed as it relates to the divine essence, corresponds to what Ibn Battah al-Akhbari referred to as al-Dhatiyah or al-Niya, selfhood or being.
That he is what he is in Niya, إنه كذا.
This terminology was mischaracterized by the Wahhabi sect, who alleged that Ibn Battah prefigured Ibn Taymiyyah in the latter's contention, and as they claim, misguided tripartite division of Tawheed. This sounds a bit doesn't read well. Okay. According to this understanding, the ilah, God, deity, under discussion is wajib al-wujud, the necessary being, is self-sustaining, singular and unique. He is not a member of any type of genus, as no element, substance, matter, or divine type of or category exists alongside him. He is one, singular, and indivisible, the absolute self-sufficient. He is characterized by the attributes previously mentioned. However, in Ibn Battah al-Akbari's tripartite classification of al-Iman, which is distinct from Tawheed and must not be conflated, he included al-Khaliqiyya, creatorship, within an-Niha,
So Ibn Battah is
self-being.
discussing Iman, actually, not discussing Tawheed.
This inclusion was based on 2 points, namely that creatorship is one of the most distinctive characteristics of al-uluhiyya, divinity. Second, Ibn Battah did not account for the existence of polytheistic beliefs that attribute offspring to Allah, sons and daughters derived from a supposed divine substance or essence, who nonetheless lack independent creatorship. Forms of shirk contradicting this next section, forms of shirk contradicting this category of Tawheed. This aspect of Tawheed is contradicted by various forms of doctrinal shirk. Perhaps the most obvious is the belief in the multiplicity of divine essences in different traditions, whether in abstract philosophical systems or simplistic folk beliefs. Examples include the claim of certain philosophers regarding the eternity of multiple entities, such as Aristotle's assertion of the co-eternity of the universe alongside Allah, or the idea upheld by others that unformed primordial matter is eternal. This constitutes shirk fil that. Shirk, in essence, as they posit alongside Allah other eternal, self-sufficient entities that are necessary in their existence and are not created by Allah, most exalted. Despite their claim that Allah alone is al-ilah, al-mustahiq lil-ibadah, the deity worthy or deserving of worship, they simultaneously uphold shirk in essence while professing Tawheed in worship. To our knowledge, however, none among them ever claim that primordial matter is itself worthy of deserving of worship. In truth, their claim that they are monotheists or that they practice monotheism in worship is false. Attributes such as pre-eternity, necessary existence, or primordiality, regardless of the terminology used, are exclusive to Allah. These qualities necessarily follow from His being the true deity, uniquely distinguished as the originator of creation. Therefore, attributing pre-eternity to a being other than Allah effectively ascribes an essential characteristic of divinity to that being. This amounts to making that being a deity alongside Allah, or in other terms, setting up as nid, rival to Allah. This precisely is shirk.
Yeah.
Moreover, the worship of Allah cannot coexist with shirk in any forms, as has been definitively demonstrated earlier. How then can it be claimed that there is such a thing as Tawheed fil Ibadah, monotheism in worship, while shirk is present? Far be it from Allah. Such a claim is an exposed sophistry that deceives only those ensnared by the false Wahhabi definition of ibadah. As you can see, this is a complex philosophical argument whose invalidity is manifest, as explained in detail in other chapters of this present work. There is but one necessary existent. He is singular and without addition or subtraction. So just to clarify on this, so what you're saying is that how can we claim that there's Tawheed fil Ibadah while there's shirk? So you're saying that if it's in essence already predisposed towards shirk, the word calling it Tawheed is redundant. Is that what you said? Is a contradiction within the statement itself?
No, it's no. That's it is that they don't deny that regarding that the universe is co-eternal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or Allah, that other deity co-eternal with Allah. They don't deny that it's shirk, yeah, in itself. But those who say, for example, the Huli, the original matter, the unstructured matter is eternal, and Allah is only structuring it, giving it a form and image and things like that. Obviously, it's nonsense. They they are mushrik, but they are not worshipping the Mat al-Dahiyuli. Nobody said the Dahiyuli is divine and worthy of worship, which undermines their definition of ibadah. So there's some problem there. There's this interconnection, which will become more clear when we discuss what the definition of ibadah is. Actually, ibadah in their mind is some acts of human acts are by themselves ibadah, independent of the direction. That will come on more detail. So this example of this contradiction, maybe they did not phrase it properly there in a clarified way. We will, inshallah, the edition will make it much clearer. But in any case, Ibn Taymiyyah and the Wahhabi never went to the Tawheed of that. They relegated to Asma and Sifat, and just maybe introduction, 4 or 5 lines. There's no Hayy Qayyum, no eternal except Allah, and then they start discussing the attributes and so on, which is either it's a issue of further expansion of the divine attributes and perfection and so on, which is nice, but it has nothing to do with Tawheed, or unless they apply it somehow that some entity may have some of these attributes equal to the divine, and that's the shirk then, and so on. And then they will get stuck then with the ta'rif of ibadah. Again, everywhere they get stuck, because the definition of ibadah is catastrophic. That's it. That's it. A list of it. Although they corrected now in the schools in Saudi Arabia, as Abu Wahab once mentioned, they define ibadah is obedience, essentially. In some sense, it's closer to that, much better than that. It needs to be done more structured, and than that. And all of that is proceeded by a certain belief, because you can obey, for example, the rulers, legitimate or otherwise. Obviously, you are not allowed to obey the legitimate ruler, but assume whatever first we follow, based on that the divine command is ordering you to obey them. So there is not ibadah. And this is still ta'ah. So it has to classify that more structured, that ibadah meaning ta'ah, or ta'ah is ibadah. Has to be more structured than that, but much better than sujood is ibadah. Love is ibadah. This is ibadah. That's the original, or extreme love and extreme submission. Extreme, they add the word extreme, think it transfers something from just a body act or from a feeling into real ibadah. It's not. There's a love, even if extreme, which is not of type of ibadah. The submission, which is extreme, is not type of ibadah. The whole definition is messed up. Starting with that, the division, but what killed them and showed clearly that they were them is that what is the mushrikeen is they don't believe Allah. They believe that in Rububiyyah, which we proved in the section there. That's false. It's not even true. Whatever they mean with Rububiyyah, including Khaliqiyya, including in that, and they have shirk in that, which they just ignored. And that their shirk is uluhiyya, meaning they're worshipping idols. What's worshipping idols? Obviously, prostrating, touching, believing, swearing by their names, questioning, querying them, and things like that. That's what they regard as ibadah, which is catastrophic in some sense. Maybe khurafa, but not ibadah.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor. So I totally understand the new and the true definition of ibadah that you argue for, which is enslavement. That's what you essentially think. But to my understanding, I think it has to be more defined, more precisely and specifically defined. It cannot be just enslavement, because otherwise it will conflate with the definition of Islam. Because in school I studied in
what is meaning enslavement? You become a slave of Allah. You accept and recognize that you are a slave of Allah. You submit to Allah. That's a slave. What is the slave? You live it. You are like a road which has been paved, mu'abbad, enslaved, submissive. It contains a submission.
I see. I came up with this definition for ibadah from you. I catch it from you. You randomly say it. I will say it in Arabic. هو التكليف الذي عليه يحاسب الإنسان. The obligation which the human will be accounted for يوم القيامة.
This is secondary. You're talking about taklif and Yawm al-Qiyamah. We are not getting there. We are going to the basic necessity of reason.
So then that's what I'm saying. The definition of عبادة will conflate with the definition of Islam, because what's the definition of
No,
Islam? هو الاستسلام لله بالتوحيد والانقياد له
حتى
بالطاعة.
even this
That's what.
definition is not like that. No, it's not a
So what
definition
is
like that.
so what is Islam then?
Submission, تسليم لله
Which
والانقياد
is which,
الطاعة الطاعة yeah.
which
تسليم لله, that's enough. Submission to Allah, enslavement to Allah.
which is also the
لا
definition
إله
of
إلا الله,
عبادة.
there's only one deity which is intrinsically sovereign and absolute.
Yes.
So
Yes.
every created being is a slave by creation automatically. When I say every messenger, every prophet sent to his people said إن ما أرسلنا من قبلك من رسول إلا نوحي إليهم أنه لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدون. That's what the summary of the message of all prophets. أنه لا إله إلا أنا, this is the fact, acknowledge this fact and witness for it.
This is the theoretical part.
The practical,
Oh,
the practical,
yes.
and including that you are necessarily, because meaning deity, meaning the supreme, the owner, the king, the one who has absolute right of command, who cannot be questioned. So turn your created nature of being slaves into a willing act of submission.
Which is taklif.
Obedience.
Which is the
Yeah,
taklif.
yeah, but turn it. He tell him turn it into. Yeah,
I see.
I'm requiring you to do it willingly now. But
I see.
act itself is defined by itself, even if no taklif has come.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So its sense is not necessarily taklif.
So even
La ilaha
before
illallah,
taklif,
you are admitting this is a necessity of reason in the universe.
I
That's
see.
theoretically absolutely well established. Nobody can deny it unless he is arguing with reason. That's it. And you may receive messengers on and you comply with that by yourself. Now we tell you, yes, that's the reality itself, but I'm ordering you to acknowledge that by your will and submit indeed, execute it by your free will.
I see.
That's a taklif. And that will be the accounting of Allah, because He created you not only to own you, it says automatically, I created you, I own you, but not for joy or something or enjoyment or having a piece of theater watching in front of me. No, that you submit to by your own will, and I'm not going to force you. You can even rebel like Iblis. But if you do that, I order you, and this order is also taklifi in the sense, and will be accounted Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is the master obligation. If you fail that, I will throw you in hell.
Yes, you know, subhanallah, an ayah came to me, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُم ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًا. So the istiqan is the theoretical part. You acknowledge it by your intuition.
And you cannot, by your reason, you cannot. You can keep it in and deny publicly. No, I'm not convinced. There's not an argument, but internally, you know, it is, you are forced. Like if someone will argue with you, 2 + 2 is not 4, he's just stubborn. Internally, he knows 2 + 2 must be 4. There's no way. There's no way to define any numbers except that adding 2 numbers will be the number to itself will be doubling.
Yes, he understands it by intuition, but the submission of this process
by intuition,
is
not only by intuition, also by rational consideration, by listing a proof, going even to the fundamental principles of reason and contradiction. Yeah, that's it, intuition and by rational. So a philosopher could be rationally doing that.
By conscience, conscious or conscience.
Like for example, the so-called, they call it in the West deist, opposite to theist. The deists say there's a creator, he created everything. Everything is his own and so on. But they say he doesn't care sending messengers. We don't accept messengerhood. He created us just so we manage ourselves. He's enjoying the theater. He's looking at the theater, enjoying it. That's what they believe. So they will not willingly submit to what comes because nothing is coming for him. In reality, they have attributed to him certain attributes which is not befitting for his majesty. That he is created being with free will. You are the one who arguing like that. Yes, you have free will, free mind. You can do things, you can leave things, and so on. Is this a part of game? Enjoying what you do, with the resulting suffering, also because human freedom is resulting in tribes and people attacking each other, the strong one eating the poor, the weak, and so on, which you internally feel rejected because you may subject to the suffering yourself. So yeah, Is he enjoying suffering? You attribute to him something negative. No, that's not. This has a great purpose, because this free will is having a higher value and they have a certain purpose for you. And that's this one. So they are not giving Allah all his attributes as should be deficient, but they will not deny that if a command comes for him, we have to submit. You know, they say no command will ever come. He created just for joy. So his understanding of Allah is deficient. That they call deist. So they call them not theist. The theism, the real theism must involve that Allah has the absolute right to send messenger. That he historically have sent, we can verify historically.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's a bit fine, but we have to dig and maybe do the formulation better in the next.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, we need to summarize this entire talk into like few sentences to define ubudiyya as ibadah, essentially.
In the chapter, inshallah, when we edited now, when we are going the editing, we are almost now at the Shirk al-Arab.
Mashallah, mashallah. Yes.
And don't forget to get the issue with the Dropbox and so on in place.
I've done it already. I set up like a professional Dropbox, but I sent email to Ukasha. I did not receive. So please, if you could tell Ukasha to contact me and give me the access.
Don't rely on email. Put in Telegram and I will follow them.
Okay. Inshallah. Okay.
Email is not good enough. Telegram is the best because he reviews Telegram relatively regularly.
Yes, I tried to call him on Telegram as well, but he did not answer.
Talk shop
inshallah,
later. This is a live broadcast. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No worries, inshallah.
Yeah.
Okay. Page 250, carrying on, the belief in two eternal deities. The doctrine that posits the existence of two eternal and pre-existent deities, one being the good God, the God of good, identified with light or Allah, and the other the God of evil, identified with darkness or Satan, as maintained by certain dualistic sects among the Magians. Evidently, this constitutes shirk in the divine essence. Some adherents of this viewpoint limit worship and love to the God of good, professing hatred and enmity towards the God of evil, denying and disbelieving in him. Others may restrict love to God of good, while offering worship to both. They worship and love the God of good.
Worship meaning actual worship, sacrifice, burning incense, all these things which symbolism. Let's say rituals. Better we say instead of act of worship, rituals. Rituals of worship, or rituals of which appears as if they are devotion. Rituals of devotion is the best.
Devotion is good because it doesn't. In devotion, you can be devoted to any entity, irrespective of what you believe of it.
And in this case, in that case, it's just to keep it at bay, to get away from its evil and things like that. Yeah.
But also worship the God of evil by submitting to him, bowing in humility and obedience to avert his harm and wrath, despite their hatred and detestation of him.
So
and then
that's the mentioning that like that is the time you say al-ibadah هي منتهى الذل مع منتهى الحب. Mixing the two. No, it's not necessarily like that. It's not necessarily like that. He confused the ibadah to Allah. It ought to be منتهى الحب مع منتهى الذل. But this is just a characteristic of it. It's not its a fundamental definition. But you see from that how the problem has come from. Especially for Ibn Taymiyyah, very late in Islam, nobody is really having any real shirk anywhere, and he never traveled to shirky domains and so on. He's confined between Syria and Egypt, and there's no mushrikeen there of that type whatsoever. So he will not see that what's going on, what was going on in Mecca and what's going on in India, and he never traveled to India and outside the Muslim world to see what's really the shirk of the Quran is addressing shirk of Arab as an example of it. And this also one things which make you blind about these things. And everyone's worshiping Allah fundamentally, and worshiping Allah is an extreme of devotion and so on. But then he lists these list of items, and then he thinks that ibadah, but this sense must contain love and submission, because that's the ibadah of Allah. Otherwise, how can anyone submit to Allah while he is hating him or not loving him? Seems to be impossible. So he thought that's part of ibadah. No, that's ibadatullah. It's different. That's ibadatullah is a unique. Any shirk, or either in ideology or in action, related to that ideology, like believing the jinn can run away from Allah, get you immediately out of the fold of Islam, make you mushrik, and then ibadatullah is done. You are not abid lillah. Ibadah is spoiled completely, rejected completely. You have not complied with the command, La ilaha illallah, fa'buduni, addressed to Musa and to all people in the world. So he did not see that because he's immersed in all societies around him are loving the main, basically really believing and loving and devoted to Allah alone. Maybe some underground zindiq, dualist and underground atheist and so on that exist everywhere, but it has no interaction with them directly. They are hiding. They cannot dare coming publicly. So that's it. That's it. So we'll get confusion. Because he could not see really. He did not see the other type of shirk and the other type. He did not want to, he didn't need to see it. He need to read the Quran carefully and connect it properly. But the problem again, the reading started to be disconnected. One ayah is read, other ayah far away, and even one ayah is taken out of context, and then you get lost. You get lost. You lose. You lose. Even with the editing now with the Book of Tawheed, I noticed in various places we invoke one ayah, which has the essential things we are invoking, but the ayah before and after make it very clearer and crisper. So now we are adding that now, getting the whole context. Not only the bit which is having the evidence, the whole context. An example, you know the example. When the Madkhali and so on, they stop there. When you stop there, you end in a catastrophe. The same ayah. They invoke only half of the ayah. What's the other half? That had disappeared from Islamic history since the time of the Tabi'een. Muslim ibn Abd al-Malik was commanding an army and so on, and he was arguing with some people, with Abu Hazim, one of the Tabi'een, and told them, did Allah, Abu Hazim objected to something, he said, did Allah order you to obey us? And he said, you failed to read the one after that. Didn't Allah take away from you by saying, I am disputing with this point. Let's see what Allah Rasul has said. And Muslim al-Malik was shut up. Even the ayah being cut in pieces became wide habit. Also in Fuqah, I find they invoke part of the ayah and the rest of the ayah, which may have some import on that, but must have, not maybe, is ignored completely. Let's carry on anyway. And still, even in the final writing you have which translated, semi-final, you see a few things that we have missed also, were developed by the discussion and analysis. So it's quite difficult, but we will have it, inshallah, so that, inshallah, it will be more clarified than already there. But all these examples I mentioned to show that to have a definition, or Ibn Taymiyyah definition, it must have a fundamental fault. What is it? We'll come more in detail then.
Okay, I hadn't checked the comments. Some people are asking some questions, so you're welcome to join the Zoom. We can, when we finish the main part of this chapter, we can do questions on the subject as you like. So join the Zoom. It's all in the description. It's the same one every week. Yeah, jump in. I'll let you in. Okay, continuing with the text. This, as can be observed, is a philosophical position, yet it is grasped and adhered to by many among the common folk of these groups. The falsity of this doctrine is beyond doubt, disproved by the aforementioned definitive arguments and others besides. The subject is vast and would require dedicated works and comprehensive research to fully address. Continuing, next section, subsection, the belief in divinity as a genus. The notion that divinity, like humanity, constitutes a genus with multiple individual family members who may reproduce and propagate their kind. Within this framework, the ranks and statuses of these deities vary. Some are rulers, while others are subordinate. Some are great, while others are lesser. Some are kings, while others are enslaved, all being analogous to the hierarchy found within human societies. For these adherents, neither pre-eternity nor self-sufficiency is a necessary attribute of divinity. The deities are believed to emerge and be born after previously being non-existent, and it is not implausible in their view that these deities might also perish. Furthermore, perfection or freedom from deficiency is not considered a requisite attribute of a deity in this belief system. Indeed, some deities are attributed with disgraceful and scandalous traits, such as fornication, theft, and other immoral acts to a greater extent than others. This belief reflects the creed of the majority of simple-minded mushrikeen, including the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, most Arab mushrikeens, and the common people of India. It forms the essence of much of the world's shirk. Among these groups, it is generally acceptable to believe that gods and humans may intermarry, produce demigods or giants, just as gods may intermarry with jinn to produce angels. Such beliefs are rife with absurdities and disgraces. Differentiation among the gods, next section. These purported...
المشركين العرب and so on are full of that, while Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Abbas claim that Arab have no shirk al-rububiyyah. What do you mean with shirk al-rububiyyah? In many universe, they have even shirk in that. But they ignore that completely, because if they have focused on that, started with that, then they would have not fallen in that trap. But they completely ignored that and they relegated in Asma and Sifat. And they made it like an introductory note. There's only a divine entity and so on, no multiple, no economies, no something like that. And then they go with the various attributes and fight with the Mu'tazila and fight with Ash'ari, things like that. That's all. That's it. Interpretation of Sifat and so on. Instead of the most fundamental thing, which we listed about the divine, fundamental divine attributes, they just ignore. You see how we mentioned upstairs, we did not mention only knowledge of everything. We don't say Sami'a Basir like the Ash'ari say it's a simple, essential, ma'nawi and so on. We don't even mention that's part of ilm in a certain way, just to correspond to human minds about that we have. Our ilm comes partly from hearing and seeing. And so we have the divine name, Sami'a, al-Alim, al-Basir, but it's part of ilm, certain type of element, recognizing reality and things like that. In case of Allah, is obviously different, clearly different. But they say it's having another meaning. Okay, perfectly fine. But we don't list it there because كل شيء عليم is enough. كل شيء عليم is enough for that. But they go then, what Sami and Ali, the 8 attributes that the Ash'ari claim are not correct, it's correct, and then they go in this nightmare. That's the main thing which was done from time before Ahmad bin Hanbal all the way to Ibn Taymiyyah. And then he got busy with the so-called grave worship, and then this catastrophe emerged. Okay, carry on. This is history, you know, to see how it historically developed. And ended with the fallacy that the Arabs, they don't have shirk al-rububiyyah, essentially. No, they don't have. It's only in uluhiyyah, with a confused meaning. Later, Wahhabi said, Tawheed al-uluhiyyah, say actually it's more precisely called Tawheed al-ibadah, which makes things even worse. But at least the word is a little bit better. It's not in contradiction to ilah, as defined in the Quran. They cannot run away from that. So there's a slight improvement in naming, at least. And not only Abdul Wahhab, he did not use that. I think it's used from his students and the people after him. Recently, it used Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, al-Uluhiyyah, or al-Ibadah. And so this is Saudi scholars using that more frequently now in the recent century or something like that. Okay, carry on.
Okay. Page 251, carrying on, the last paragraph. Differentiation among the gods. These purported deities are also believed to differ in their powers and specializations. For instance, one god may be responsible for the sun, another for a war, a third for the sea, while others govern love, hunting, death, or annihilation. Some gods are said to cause plants to grow, others protect merchants, and still others are even assigned the role of patron deities of thieves. Such beliefs, filled with contradictions and obscenities, are inherently fallacious and devoid of coherence or credibility. It is therefore not surprising that to hear one of the Arab mushrikeen proclaim, "Here I am, no partner do you have except a partner that belongs to you. You own him and all that he owns." Such a statement reflects their belief in the existence of other deities, who are in some sense partners with Allah, even if they occupy the status of subjugated servants, lower down in the hierarchy or pecking order of the gods. These deities, according to their belief, belong to the type, category, or clan of divinities. This statement does not imply, as some have misunderstood, that these so-called partners are merely created subservient beings who are in no way part of the genus of divinity. Some interpreters, failing to contextualize this statement alongside other corroborative texts and historical accounts, erroneously concluded that this phrase, "you own him and all that he owns," indicates an acknowledgement that such a partner is not divine but a created subjugated being who holds no power over life, death, or resurrection. It is entirely plausible that such a partner could be nothing more than a dead entity buried beneath an elaborately constructed shrine or dome. Yet, despite this, such figures were worshipped by these people and deemed partners with Allah. How far the misguided imaginations of the extreme Wahhabi faction have strayed in their interpretation of such matters. So, can you clarify what you mean here? You're saying that
the wording that they have no partner except a partner, illa sharikana, except a partner who you own, and you own him and own whatever this partner owns. Does not mean that this partner, which is owned by Allah and owns his own kingdom, does not mean that it is not divine, of divine essence, because these people have no problem with multiple divine beings and divine genus and things like that. Even divine categories, good one, evil ones. They have no problem.
In other words, presupposing
but because the Wahhabis and Ibn Taymiyyah, and after that the Wahhabi did not study that first, and the duality and these things, and did not even bother about the belief of the Arabs, which is full in the Quran, that Allah has that Lat and Uzza are angels and their daughter and the companions of Allah. They discounted that as if it doesn't exist. They came to this strange conclusion. But the wording does not mean that necessarily, because they're coming from a point of view is that what is ever owned by Allah must be created. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. And it's not divine. That's not the case. For the Mushrikeen, it's not the case. For them, the divinity, the divine essence is not one. It is not one. No. Okay. So this is a real serious problem. If that's not your starting point, you will go and think, oh, maybe, as they say, they think, oh, maybe what you own and whatever he owns is maybe someone dead in a grave with a shrine, maybe. And then they can't construct Shirk al-Qubur. But this does not give a license. The statement of the Mushrikeen of the Arab does not give this license, if understood properly. Besides, it's obviously based on confused understanding of divinity anyway. How can you invoke that as an evidence? Carry on.
The truth is that the phrase, "except a partner that belongs to you, you own him and all that he owns," in itself does not definitively indicate that the worshippers considered the partner to be of a fundamentally different nature or genus from the divine owner.
Because illa sharikan, except a sharik, a partner who is like that, is a partner. Is not, they don't regard themselves as partners, or the mountains or the rocks as partners. But this partner is something else of Allah, even if he's owned a slave to Allah, because they believe divinity is like humanity, king, and this may be like a vassal king. This is the Shahanshah, and this is the king of a locality, under Shahanshah, under the king of kings. And he has his own kingdom, but it's under the king of kings. So he's of the king category, of the ruler category, not of the slaves, the serfs category. So that's they could not comprehend that. I said, in time of the environment of all of Muslims and so on, there's no other divine being of the Jahiliyyah. He was never in India to see how the people worship, what they think about the idols of that. Never interrogated that. Never Wahhab is even further removed from that. Ibn Taymiyyah is more intellectual. He should have done that, but he didn't do. He thought he doesn't need to do. By reading the Quran and some bits and pieces about the Arab shirk, and I came to this fantastic idea that they don't have shirk and rububiyyah. Where did you get that? From such misconception, ignoring the fundamental one, that's the divine essence and entity is only one. Ignoring Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, ignoring that. This is the starting point. That's the reality of Allah. And this statement, you have no labbayka la sharika lak, there's no partner to you except one partner or partners who you own, and you own what they own. You are king of them, they are king of kings, they are kings, and they own some kingdom. So you own everything. The sub-king, the vassal king, and his kingdom, which is clear. In society, it's the same. When the vassal king in Yemen sent to Messenger of Allah a letter, his master, the king of kings, Pervez, son of Hormuz, has ordered him to do that. And Hormuz is the king of kings. He is king of Baban, and Baban is king of the people of Yemen. And the people of Yemen are the serfs of both, serf of Baban and serf of the super king, owned by those completely without being partner, because they have no kingdom, they have no power in that sense. That's possible for humans. We see it. Vassal kingdom, state depending upon a master state or a world power. We see it completely with our own eyes, but it does not apply to divinity, because the divinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his worthy of being offered all these submission and all this is based on his divine essence. It's unique. Nobody else shares that. So even the misinterpretation of that opened the door of saying, they believe the idols owned by Allah, they own. And even if maybe someone engraved, the one engraved is dead, if he's really dead, and they believe he is dead, if that's a belief in him, then there's no way they have anything on. It doesn't own anything. He's gone. What does he own? So they cannot be worshipping the grave or the one in the grave. So unless they believe in the one of the grave as being some kind of a divine nature from the divine family. And this is another grave worship. It's an idol, another idol. It's complete mess. Complete mess by ignoring this fundamental one. By saying, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُن لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And that's what the answer, I think, in Mission Shirk al-Arab, that's what the answer from the Mushrikeen, and some Jews ask you, give us the genealogy of your God, where he belongs, which kind of rank Christians. And the Jibreel came saying, there's no genealogy, that's he is what he is, that's it. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Not wahid, not only one, ahad. Unique, undividable. Allahu Samad, absolutely perfect. No gaps, we discussed that time. No hollow, no gap, meaning free of all gaps of deficiencies. That's the meaning of absolute perfection. No gaps or deficiency whatsoever. Lam yalid wa lam yulad, to refute all these attributes. Lam yalid, he made lam yalid first because they believe that procreation for him is easy, no problem. Lam yalid, including Christian. Walam yulad is triviality but clear. Nothing before him. He's the first after all. There's no genealogy. I mentioned that after, because nobody was disputing that really, but the first one was to be rejected first. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there's nothing similar to him or equivalent. Everything is not equivalent, have no any quality in any aspect. Equivalent meaning equivalent. Kufu is comparable in any attributes. While identity means identically, completely identical. No, it's up to a question. Nobody said identity, but mukafa, even in one attribute. Like, for example, the jinn can run away from him. Even in this aspect, limited aspect of power, running away from him. They cannot create him, but they can run away from him. But that should not be possible for a created being to be able to escape Allah's hand. Allah's hand, let us say metaphorically, is infinitely long. You can't escape. He will get you. He may let you go for whatever reason, but he is the one letting you go. You can't escape him. He'll get you. That's it. But this way, they give divine attribute to the jinn by virtue of that they can run away from Allah. And the jinn admitted that in Surah Al-Jinn. Now we know. We're not able to undermine Allah being on earth far away from him, nor we are able to run away from him, because they believe that the jinn and the evil spirits were down on earth, deep inside, far away from the attack of the heaven. No. Now the jinn recognize in the Quran, and our Safi, the most evil one, Iblis himself, was saying fabricated things about Allah Ta'ala, because he was telling them, you the creator of the universe, have a consort, a wife, and have children, and we are the children of his brother, so we can take liberties, somehow having divine attributes. But then when you read the Quran, recognize that's all fabrication and lies.
Continue?
Yeah, okay. Can you? But he never synchronized that with this and this and this. No, never. cutting the Quran in pieces and taking if you are blinded by desire a certain direction, whatever the motivation is, you will overlook that what doesn't fit in your desire and not willing to go back and connect and correct and reanalyze.
The phrase does not establish that these mushrikeen believe that the Malik owner to be Allah, Lord, and Master, while the Mamluk owned was by necessity a created and subjugated servant who had held no power over life, death, or resurrection. This matter will be addressed exhaustively in the next chapter. Those who claim, as Ibn Taymiyyah's imitators generally do, that this interpretation reflects the definitive and exclusive intent of the Arab mushrikeen are undoubtedly following conjecture and fabricating lies. Such claims contradict well-established historical evidence and the unequivocal Quranic proofs previously outlined. Moreover, their assertion contradicts the very words of the statement in question, which explicitly says, "Accept a partner that belongs to you." This is a clear admission that the entity invoked is indeed considered the partner to Allah in some sense or capacity. It is astonishing that some would use this statement to justify their falsehoods, analyzing its terms as though it were divine scripture. They do so despite knowing that these mushrikeen occupied the lowest depth of thoughts, with trivial minds, superficial understanding, and a complete lack of intellectual rigor. How then can such ambiguous phrases, vague terms, and shallow reasoning become authoritative evidence? How can the clear and unequivocal signs of Allah, which we have studied comprehensively in the previous volume of this series, be neglected in favor of such baseless arguments? How can time and effort be squandered debating the intent behind such a trifling and absurd statement from the Arab mushrikeen? Next subsection, the belief in the multiplicity of hypostases within a single essence. This doctrine represents a series of convoluted and contradictory claims espoused primarily by certain speculative philosophers and others inclined towards obtuse reasoning. These individuals attempt to reconcile the Tawheed al-Dhat with the shirk into which they have fallen. Instead of abandoning shirk entirely and returning to pure monotheism, they have devised some of the most untenable and contradictory assertions, reducing unity to multiplicity and multiplicity to unity. 1 second.
The special trinity. But also there's some kind of duality, that God and the devil are the two faces of the same coin. And things like that.
Such claims are in direct conflict with the necessities and axioms of reason. Worse still, they attribute to Allah, glorified and exalted, what even human beings would deem a form of mental illness or psychological disorder, such as schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder. Examples of this include, most obviously, the Christian Trinity. This refers to the claim that God is three distinct entities, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, referred to as three hypostases or three persons within a single essence. According to this doctrine, God is one in three and three in one. This paradox has perplexed even the most astute of their theologians and dialectician,
yeah.
Who ultimately resort to declaring the Blessed Trinity as a divine mystery beyond human comprehension, understanding, or rationalization, insisting that one must simply believe and submit without inquiry. It is important. Sorry, must read this example amongst the great many of who have espoused this can be the leap of faith or the quantum leap, formulated and expressed by the 19th century philosopher Soren Kierkegaard. That's the subheading here.
Says, I believe because it's impossible.
That's brilliant to use as an excuse.
Yeah, that's a statement, literal statement of Kierkegaard. He's a Christian.
That's retarded.
Was discussing issues that there are certain things which are simply impossible to accept rationally. Said yes, but I believe because it's impossible. Even worse than despite being impossible, I based on belief is but it's a mystery. I believe in it. Instead of saying like that, he said it in this offensive form, stubborn insistence on.
Okay.
Another example.
Okay, just continuing. It is important to clarify that our reference to schizophrenia here is not intended as an insult or mockery. Rather, it was employed by a philosopher and university professor as an illustrative analogy to explain the concept of the Trinity or the dilemma of two natures and wills coexisting within the person of Christ as a means of simplifying this notion for readers. Such an explanation, however, is fraught with its own theological and logical difficulties. The Brahmic Trinity, prevalent among the Brahmins, this belief holds that one God had three faces: Brahma, the creator and originator; Vishnu,
That's one version. They have other versions, yeah.
Vishnu, the sustainer, provider, and God of goodness and mercy; and Shiva, also known as Mahesh, the destroyer and God of destruction, death and destruction. However, their doctrines are riddled with inconsistencies and ambiguities, leaving it unclear whether these three are merely faces of a single essence or independent entities that have emerged from one another. The lack of clarity further complicates the coherence of their theological claims. Another example is the belief of certain dualists in a creative cosmic force with two sides, one being a benevolent, luminous side and a malevolent, dark side. They assert a concept of one in two and two in one, attempting to merge duality within unity. This notion has been systematically propagated through what appears to be an organized effort by certain film production houses and directors who aim to popularize such myths by cloaking them in emotional narratives and embedding them within broader cosmic frameworks. An example of this can be in the Star Wars series.
The right side or the right side or the good side,
the
the
Star Wars.
and the dark side. Yeah, the light side, dark side.
Sorry, they're not doing shirk. That's within the contingent universe. So
yeah.
they're on the minhaj. Exalted is Allah far above what the wrongdoers claim in such fabrications. A related idea is the viewpoint God and Satan are two faces of the same coin, which has been attributed to Turki al-Hamad, a figure closely aligned with the ruling elite of Saudi, the oppressive clique holding grip of the supposed land of Tawheed. The state which claims to champion Tawheed and support truth and its adherents paradoxically nurtures such contradiction. Even its former Grand Mufti, Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, rahimahullah, has been accused of articulating similarly problematic positions, forms of transformation. Here, this relates to the viewpoint of the supposed transformation of a non-divine being into a deity through the indwelling or union of a divine essence. Its central position is that the non-divine entity can become a deity by hulul, incarnation, or even indwelling of a divine essence within it, or through ittihad, its union with the divine. As a result, new divine beings are believed to emerge, which did not previously exist. Several examples of this can be made here. The belief held by a minority of heretical Sufis considered kuffar among the Islamic tradition regarding the Prophet ﷺ and his family, or concerning some of their so-called aghwath, helpers, and aqtab, spiritual poles. They claim that the divine essence indwells or unites with these figures, elevating them to the status of deities. Blimey. Perhaps most well known in this regard is the belief of the majority of Christians regarding Jesus, the Son of Mary, peace and blessing be upon him and his mother. According to their doctrine, God, or more precisely, the hypostasis of the Son, also referred to as the Word, incarnated or indwelled within the human body of Jesus. This fusion is said to have produced the figure of Jesus Christ, who is human in his composition of flesh and blood, as Jesus, and simultaneously divine as the heavenly Christ. There is also the belief of a small, now extinct Christian sect regarding Mary, peace be upon her and her son, who claim that the divine essence indwelled within her, rendering her divine. The majority of Christians, however, reject this outright and deny the divinity of Mary, while still bestowing upon her the title Mother of God. Such a contradiction is difficult to reconcile. We established in the previous volumes, definitive proofs of the impossibility of Allah ever taking a son under any circumstance. The utmost that can occur is that Allah may choose from among his creations whomever he wills for a special status of selection, istifa, and nothing beyond this. This special selection which some may metaphorically refer to as adoption, is the only possible scenario. Anything beyond it is absolutely impossible and inconceivable. The idea of biological offspring is impossible, just as the adoption of another divine being to become an adopted son is also impossible, as there exists only one divine being, without any addition or subtraction, Allah, the Mighty, the Wise. The adoption of a created being in a matter that transforms the creature into a divine entity is a far-fetched and wild fantasy, which is likewise impossible. The motherhood of Mary, whether attributed to Allah, exalted is He, or the Messiah, is logically impossible under any condition, due to the necessary correlation between sonship and motherhood. Such a claim can only be metaphorical if they were to assert that Mary gave birth solely to the human Jesus, who later became the Messiah, possibly at the point when John baptized him, through the indwelling of the hypothesis of the Son or its union with him. Ascent. Here, this is the viewpoint that relates to the transformation of a non-divine being into a deity through ascent, regardless of the mechanism to achieve this ascent. Consider the following remarkable example. The Indian Puranas, which are later texts compared to the Vedas, narrate a story with the following meaning. There was a sage named Durvasas, known for his extraordinary powers, which he had attained through yoga and self-discipline. On one occasion, this sage traveled to the realm of the gods, bringing with him a garden of exquisitely fragrant flowers as a gift for Indra, the lord of the heavens. However, Indra carelessly hung the garland of the tusk of his elephant, showing no admiration or appreciation of the sage's gift. This deeply offended Durvasas, who was known for his extreme sensitivity and his anger. He cursed Indra and all the gods, and as a result, the gods gradually weakened, their powers diminished, and they eventually lost control over the three worlds. Their rivals, the demons, seized the opportunity to extend their dominion over the realms. The gods, helpless in their plight, observed the unfolding changes as the demons solidified their expressive rule over all living creatures. Seeking a solution, the gods approached Brahma for advice. Brahma directed them to Vishnu, and the tale goes on. Should have bought chocolates. In this account, it is evident that the sage Durvasas could enter the realm of the gods and was capable of issuing a curse upon the gods that had a tangible and destructive effect, that he was a Nid, rival to them in this regard, and perhaps even superior. By this definition, he qualifies as a deity, according to the framework outlined in this discussion. There is also another account which is narrated regarding a demoness. The demoness Mahishi was transformed by the gods into the form of a buffalo, immersing herself in rigorous ascetic practices and severe acts of devotion. She compelled Brahma to grant her a boon that she would be invulnerable to death except at the hands of a being born of Vishnu and Shiva, a condition she knew was impossible, as both were of the same nature and could not procreate. Brahma, bound by the power of her asceticism, was forced to fulfill her request. Maharshi then executed her plan of vengeance, rallying the demons under her banner, defeating the god and establishing her dominion over the world. The gods turned to the great deity Vishnu and the great deity Shiva for help in overcoming Mahishi. However, both Vishnu and Shiva confessed their inability to counter the demoness and her forces, though they did not hide their simmering rage. From the eruption of their shared volcanic fury emerged the goddess Durga, who was born to take on the task of waging war against Mahishi as the embodiment of the combined wrath of the two great deities and possibly other gods who were present. And being born in accordance with the condition imposed by Brahma, Durga was able to slay thousands of demons and eventually engage Maharshi in a series of battles and duels, the details of which are extensive. From this narrative, it is evident that Maharshi had defeated the gods and that even the great deities Vishnu and Shiva were powerless to stop her. As such, Maharshi stands as a rival to them, qualifying, according to the framework of this discussion, as a deity by definition. Man, that's a lot. Just when you think Hindus aren't dumb enough. It's like an episode of Monkey Magic back in the days.
Yeah.
Okay. The mechanism of al-irtiqa, ascent, in the story of the sage Durvasas, lies in the devotion, self-discipline, and rigorous practices, particularly through yogic exercises. Here, al-uluhiyya, divinity, is seen as something attainable, achieved by those who exert themselves in striving to reach it. This concept is intelligible only by imagining an infinite and mysterious magical force that permeates all things and can be tapped into through the appropriate means. Metacorians. Among these means are specific chants and incantations, magical symbols, and inscriptions. It is inconceivable that this infinite, mysterious, magical force represents all that remains of the supreme central deity that is Allah, or as they call it, Brahman, not to be confused by Brahma, so take note. Brahman, according to their belief, is the greatest deity beyond description and understanding, long forgotten after millennia of shirk, sorcery, and superstition. All of these beliefs, however, are inherently false, without any real existence, beyond the distorted imaginations and superstitious minds of their adherents. Definitive proof, rational proofs affirm that the wajib al-wujud, the necessary being, is singular, with no addition or subtraction. There is no genus, type, nation, or tribe of necessary beings with multiple members. Rather, he is one singular, unique, and indivisible, as previously demonstrated when discussing the proofs of Tawheed. Okay, so that concludes this chapter. So I think we should stop the main thing there. But so your purpose of delving into this was to establish without doubt this whole concept that the mushrikeen had in
the shirk is essentially, it will never be anywhere without shirk in that. Anyway, so in the divine essence, there will never be, essentially. Yeah, essentially.
I mean, theoretically, someone can make up a religion, but what's out there?
Most classical shirk, with the exception of shirk in ruling and so on. That's the certain features that Ali ibn Hatim did not understand, that adopting the monks and scribes as deity beside Allah, lords beside Allah, is a shirk, because he objected that the Quran says they were commanded to worship only one Lord, or enslave themselves to one Lord. He didn't answer the worship in the correct sense. But this applies for those who would legislate outside the legislation, against the legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That may be the only one which is not really in the sense directly, but all others, and that's the reason it's a bit difficult. Also, the Wahhabi never, that's the reason they say Tawheed Fasad al-Hakimiyya, because they don't understand where Hakimiyya comes from. In that sense, although they admit it's kufr and so on, but it's not part of Tawheed. So they are essentially like still in the level of sophistication like Ali ibn Hatim, but in the other side.
They will relegate Tawheed.
Yeah, so that's it. And I gave these examples just for enjoyment, especially with these with Mahesh. That's the reason the buffalo is an evil entity in India. The cow is the one who's holy. The buffalo is not. Most likely these stories emerged from that the people coming from the north, the one who invaded India, the Brahmin, which originally from on the genealogy of R, and the poor Indian from C, and they were darker, and these were light, and then obviously they dominated them and regarded themselves these as the lowest of the low, and their deities were declared to be satanic, and all these deities, Mahesh and so on, all southern. And the nice ones are northern. And they will attempt to do compromise later by Krishna. Krishna is depicted as blue or dark colored. Attempt to reconcile the races. All of these are attempt to solve societal problems by exporting them up into the divine realm. Then find the solution there and bring it down.
But it is true that Indo-Aryans migrated from north to south, right?
From north to south, actually from plain of Russia and
yes.
Volga
all the way to Iran. All the way to Iran, by the way.
Iran and also, Iran, Afghanistan, and so on. These are the Indo-Aryans. Yes. And they defeated these darker people there and established their kingdoms there. Even they have in their midst the kingdoms of Ariana, the Aryan,
Yes.
Ariana Grande.
So this is ancient history. Ariana Grande. And it developed then in that direction. And they made everything, and the caste system was developed around that. So the lowest caste are usually these who originally descend from these original people, and they themselves, they are najis, they are impure, and those their deities are satanic.
They are initially hunter gatherer. They are the natives of the land, essentially.
they're very native. Yeah, that's the history. But that is recent. That's maybe 3,000 years before
Yes.
Christ or something like roughly, or 2,000 years. These invasions started. So all
Yes.
these myths go to 1,500, 2,000 years before Christ, roughly.
Yes. Professor, interestingly, one time you were talking about Ibn Taymiyyah, you noted that he did not tell us anywhere when is Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah, are Rububiyyah and Uluhiyyah different, or are they separated, or are they related?
He said إذا اجتمع افترق وإذا افترق اجتمع.
Absolutely.
Meaning إذا اجتمع, if they were in the same ayah or something else, then they mean the same thing. And
Yes.
with different ayahs, they mean different things, which is
Absolutely. This is essentially again what Ibn Abdul Wahhab, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, reiterated in his book.
Yeah.
He says that when they are combined, they mean different things. They are different. And when for example, and he gave actually the example of when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, "Who is your Lord?" Man Rabbuk? He means Man ilahuk. So if you want me to read his quote,
Well,
actually,
افترق is not in that quotation, is only the word رب, no ilah is used. So he based on that, he said, because Rabb is mentioned alone. If Rabb is mentioned alone, ilah mentioned alone, then
yes,
then they are the same.
they are the same, essentially.
But
That's
if
what
they
he
are
said.
in the same ayah or the same context, they are different.
They are different. Yeah. So he actually says وإذا سئل في قبره من ربك معناها من إلهك. So how do you respond to him?
This one is fallacy. Just go to the ayah of عدي بن حاتم. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ما أمروا إلا يعبدوا إلها واحد. And this is they are together there, and they mean the same thing. Rabb here and Ilah here, they are ordered not to worship, is the Rabb mentioned earlier. So this is meaning in that context, it is in the concept of worship, which they connect to the Elohiyya, the Wahhabi. It is also using the word Rabb, which means Sayyid and legislator. So they are stuck.
He says because ربوبية التي أقر بها المشركون ما يمتحن بها أحد. He says that the lordship, the ربوبية.
Yeah, because they say they don't have شركة ربوبية, but this is
yes.
And the claim إذا اجتمع افترقا. This is what's the evidence for that? There's no evidence for that.
He gave analogy. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab gave analogy. I don't know how convincing it is. He says, for example, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين. We know that by this ayah, فقراء is different than masakin. But if فقراء comes individually alone, then it means then it covers فقراء and masakin. But if it came together, it means different things.
Yeah, but this is different because this Quran indicate that by itself in the Arabic language, not by arbitrary. Rabb is different than Ilah everywhere by its own linguistic original. Ilah is because the development of Ilah linguistically took a long time, and the Quran fixed it by the ayat al-tamanu. Finish, over. The one who create and dominate with his intrinsic power. Use of agent and so on. That settled it. That's the way it should be understood. All the Quran, without any and Rabb is defined as either the one who is sovereign, king, and so on, or the one who manages the affairs and so on. Nowhere is an issue of creation mentioned there. But
okay.
Yeah. So this is based on their definition of Rabb. إذا اجتمع افترق, but this definition itself is false. If you start with two things with a false definition, then whatever you conclude, if your premise is false, you can conclude good things or bad things. You know how logic works. If the premise is having a fallacy, then you can deduce fallacy, but you can use correct things, because then the premise is not working correctly. It doesn't fit. You can't deduce anything.
So let me clarify what he means. He says he gave the example of ayat الزكاة إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين. So he argues here that فقراء is different category than مساكين. But in another ayah, for example, ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. He argues that here مسكين covers both فقراء and مساكين.
Yeah. Which is right, yeah, covers here because it's not dividing in a category. Because here the people are doing voluntarily, but the zakat obligatory to feed, and nobody should come with the idea it is only for those who have nothing at all, the real faqir in Arabic language, but also miskin, the one who do not have enough. That's one definition. Another definition: the people who are under the pressure of life. In that case, not under pressure of rulers and so on, but the one who is uh, uh, the opposite of tyrants, the one who owns and control, the one who have no control. They don't have control of their life enough, but they are not completely having nothing. Almost
they don't own the means of productions.
Yeah, or things like that, or even less. They're not enough income even from salaries and so on.
I see.
So that's maybe if you hear the ayah of يطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما and say there's main categories for مسكينا ويتيما. Miskin is also, we are encouraged to give them miskin. So you don't need to search the city for people who are completely blank, have nothing, and living maybe under the sky, an open sky. Even people living still and with a rent, but they are at home, have nothing except just basic, and maybe one day they have food, another day they don't have, is not enough for their basic needs. Below what they call the line of poverty in the West, that's the defined one. Below is miskin. Faqir is the one who has nothing. Maybe essentially, maybe the clothes on his body.
Okay, but lastly, how does his analogy is not correct with regards to uluhiyya and rububiyya? Because he just gave the analogy of fuqara and masakin. So why is fuqara and masakin correct, but with uluhiyya and rububiyya he got it wrong?
Because his starting point is wrong. Because the hadith say Rabb, man rabbuk. That will be asked. Who is your Lord, whom you have enslaved yourself to? In the case if he did enslave to someone else beside Allah, then he did not regard Allah as his only sovereign Lord. And the lordship of Allah is based on being ilah, being the creator of nothing. It's more complex than that. There's a trivial example of fuqara al-masakin. Besides fuqara al-masakin can be argued against him. So we say if faqir is subcategory of miskin, so miskin is the upper category and the subcategory. Question: apply that to ilah and Rabb. What's the subcategory of what? Meaning that Rabb is a subcategory of ilah then. But they claim otherwise.
Yes, they claim otherwise.
The mushrikeen have no shirk in rububiyyah, but have shirk in elohiyyah. So it's upside down. If you start with a fallacy, you end with everything you would like. Wrong conclusion, right conclusion.
I see. Okay, yeah.
Because some people object to that. Nobody's asked about ilah in the Quran. Although the basic creed is based ashhadu la ilaha illallah Muhammad rasulullah. It's don't say the la rabba illa Allah, because there are other arbab, but not intrinsically sovereign in themselves, which is an ilah by necessity. So that's the problem. And the definition of Rabb is wrong. Because you not ask man khalaqak. It's clear. You are now dead. You know this. They come. Who khalaqak? There is no discussion about that. Discussion to whom you enslave yourself exclusively. They have another Rabb.
I see. It's clear for me, but the more I think about how they got it wrong, the more I confuse myself.
No, you don't get confused. Just check. Ilah is well defined by anti-tamanu. This is absolute and not acceptable. Either genus of ilah, who has no freedom and so on, as we discussed in the book of Tawheed, or people like ذهب كل إله ما خلق. So ilah is the khaliq with intrinsic power, so you can take his creation and go away.
Yes, I totally understand our correct understanding.
And Rabb, linguistically, the Quran did not give any other definition of Rabb. Linguistically, is that one who is sovereign, and the one who manages the universe. Manage the universe, keep at the side. It's okay. That's maybe the Arab mushrikeen did not have, but they did have. That these manage the universe. Some manage the sea, some manage but hidden in this statement. leave that, the managing the universe. What about the absolute sovereign, who have the absolute right of command intrinsically, and absolute ownership, the real absolute ownership, not the relative ownership given by Allah to someone else.
I see. No, it is clear for me, but I'm saying the more I think about how they got it wrong, their mistake, the more I got confused. It's like Trinity. The more you think about it, the more you got confused.
لا, you
It's
don't
like
need to get
Trinity.
confused because the fundamental thing is to start with shirk with tawheed الذات.
Yes.
The moment the issue is open, like we discussed just now we discussed.
Yes.
The moment the divinity can be multiple, خلاص. The dam is broken and then everything gets upside down.
Yes, absolutely.
Somebody had a question?
Every deity from genus of divine become a Rab, and every Rab become a genus of the divine because he's a Rab, a master somehow. Except that the Arab agree that the slave owner is Rab, also they use the Rab for him, control his slave, but they didn't claim that the owner is a divine because he's a human being. He's not acknowledged as a divine. This is the Rab or a Rab of the divine type is a little bit higher, somehow higher. But there's no clear distinction because they have now various ranks and so on. Where the ranks end, where is the gap? خلاص, the divinity has become similar to the created being, although absolutely dissimilar. لم يكن له كفوا أحد in any respect, nothing equivalent to him in anything. Completely, the reality is completely disjoint, absolutely disjoint. The divinity is only one being by necessity of reason, and created being which can be unlimited, with all kinds of complicated structures, some higher, some lower, some like if you look to the divinity, all of them at level zero and infinity, essentially. In that zero, there are various scales and ranks. Yes. But everyone from the relative to the divine is zero in every attribute.
Yes.
The moment you attribute one in some aspect equal to the divine, you lifted him from being created into by necessity. Well, even if you don't admit it, like the monks and scribes who can make halal haram at all.
Yeah.
And it's the only one which is a little bit difficult even for Christians and Jews to understand.
Yeah.
There's a brother who had his hand raised.
That's the reason Adi ibn Hatim said, he didn't say ما عبدناه because اتخذ أرباب من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم. Even Masih is the Rabb also. But Rabb and Ilah for them, because the distinction for them. وما يعبدوا إلها واحدا. And what he did not say ما عبدنا المسيح, because they know, they acknowledge they worship and they prostrate to Masih and all these actual rituals and so on. How confusing it's in their mind doesn't matter. But for these, we don't worship them. I says, you're wrong, Muhammad. ما عبدناهم. How are you claiming that? The Prophet clarified that to him. That's a very important hadith. From that respect.
Yeah, and
but
he said
the ayah clarifies it. Even if the hadith has not come, so but hadith Hasan, not Hasan, is irrelevant. It's supported by the ayah. Okay. So they are Rabb in the same Rububiyyah level like Al-Masih ibn Maryam. But they have been ordered to worship only one ilahan wahid. Allah use ilah here.
Yeah, so, which covers everything.
Rabb of the meaning that they can legislate, make them equal to Rabb Masih legislate, even if they are not for divine essence. That lifts them because they may make them equal in this respect to the only divine being. The same.
Absolutely.
The same jinn, the same with jinn. Nobody say that the one who jinn that can run away, the evil and so on. Nobody claim that they are divine or something else, but they say they are evil and they can run away from Allah. By this statement, خلاص, you lifted them in matter of running away at least, or power, at least in this one respect, equal to Allah.
خلاص. Yeah.
Okay, got a problem to hear the question?
Because what's the meaning of running away from Allah? You can do an action which Allah cannot undermine. Even in that one action, just running away, hiding. The main hiding, خلاص. If you're able to hide from Allah, خلاص. Then you have undermined his power. Either his power is undermined or your power is equal to his power, at least in this one respect. Which usually meaning then you are powerful everything that is. It's internally contradictory, definitely, but all shirk is contradictory internally. and then eternal contradiction, except all divinity, all rububiyyah, all sovereignty, genuine fundamental belongs only to Allah by necessity of reason. So all shirk is contradicting necessity of reason, but does not mean it is not shirk. It is shirk. It's in here in the brains. Answer is justified by various means. For example, the case of monks and scribes, they say Christ appointed them. How he appointed them? I said he told Peter, you are my church. I will, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, which is even a wrong interpretation that he will legislate and so on. But that's interpretation. That's the justification for this major breach of divine sovereignty and divine divinity. But for them, it is not a problem because they broke it with Isa. But Isa, they constructed it being not from the divine, being from the divine essence, not created, born, not created. The same with the Holy Spirit, proceeding but not created, which is impossible by itself. But that's the way they escape. Here they escape, but say it's by authorization of Isa, authorization by Allah Himself. But it's impossible. Allah cannot authorize that because meaning I give you intrinsic ownership, but it's impossible because they have no interest. I gave you the ownership of your life or your body, of money, and so on, because I'm the only creator, fundamental creator. What you do is by empowering you. But I can you empower to become absolute power and negate my power. That's not possible. That's a contradiction. So the power of legislation cannot be transferred to anybody. Being power, being real sovereignty, like what the church is doing to itself. That they meet and then what they enact on earth is khas. Is that what can even abrogate previous councils, can abrogate area scripture? No doubt about that. So they have Allah themselves, that this is only the privilege of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His divine essence, cannot be given over. He can give you kingdom, you own your life, you own Him, but it's not that restricted, and you did not have it intrinsically by yourself. Otherwise, you would be eternal.
Okay, it's got a brother who wants to ask a question. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
You're
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear. We can hear myself.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum. I just want to say Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Barakallah fiqh for everything you do. We really greatly appreciate it. I just have a quick question for you, if you don't mind. So basically, I don't know if you touch on this topic in any of your books. If you do, if you can point me to it, I really appreciate it. But or if not, if you'd ever be open to like maybe going in detail about how to properly like reestablish the khilafah like correctly from the foundation up.
I mentioned that in scattered ways. I said the part of Hizb that it is Talab al-Nusra, which da'wah first was the intensive culturing, then the public campaigning, and then Talab al-Nusra was supposed to be the next and final step to establish Khilafah. We have found out clearly in Mana' wa-Nusra wa Bina' al-Dawla, we have clearly established that Talab al-Nusra is not to establish a state. It was getting asylum, protection for the da'wah. So the only thing is not what has happened in reality, the life of Islam. In one area, he got a majority of the people supporting him and rallying around him. And then the state was established this way. So you can't, Allah establish the state. You carry the da'wah, initial campaign, and try to find, if there's a need for it, to find who will protect the da'wah. If the da'wah is oppressed in a certain domain. If it's not oppressed, you don't need, and you carry on until you get the general public approval. And the tamkeen is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. But you have to do the first stage, no doubt about that. There's no way you can get there without these previous stages.
I see. I appreciate it.
But I mentioned that scattered here and there, isn't there? But there's a comment in Mana' wa Nusra and so on. So the fundamentally is that. And that's fundamentally. So the job will be what Sheikh Khaldaqi admitted in his last part of the last few life, Abu Mahmoud, Dr. Tawfiq, went met him in the late 70s before he died, and told him all that what we are doing is without discussing the issue of Talib al-Nusra, because he was quite convinced still that Talib al-Nusra is the way to go. But says, you cannot get Nusra, because the military will never give you to the Islamic State. They will never accept it. They will get power and they will kick you out. That's clear there. So the problem is that, and the Muslims, the general Muslim, their understanding of Islam is defective. So we should focus on tafhim al-Islam. So say, yes, focus on tafhim al-Muslimin al-Islam. Muslims do not understand. Sheikh Taqi assumed that their understanding of Islam is good, sufficiently good. We just carry da'wah, focus on establishing khilafah and these khilafah issues. So, they are completely deficient in many other areas. It's almost like kids. They don't know their deen. So the job will be tafhim. So تركيز مركز, and we detected obviously that the adoption of the Hizb al-Shari was based on classical fiqh, especially in matter of estate and imama, Mawardi and so on. The Sheikh Taqi was grown in an environment and studied in a world in which the belief that these writer of these books and so on are really understood what Quran and Sunnah means about governance and so on, especially running a state and the structure. Although Sheikh Taqi made some breakthrough that, like the Shura and election and things like that, he made breakthrough that. But he did not go to the complete breakthrough, because what is classical on the table is nothing. And tons of it is hidden in hadith books scattered all over the place. Need to be concentrated and need to be attended to it much more thoroughly. So it will be part of tafhim. Which state you want to establish? The state is in mind is like a state of Mawardi, which is essentially what Muawiyah and the Khulafa until Abdul Majid have, which is a mutilated version, at least to say, of Hukum Islami. If you grade it as a Hukum Islami, if you grade it like that, some people say it's not Islam. But Sheikh Taqi was running away from that, because for him, Khilafah until its fall in 24 or 23, 24, March 23, it was somehow Islamic, just the border of it. In many cases, it's not even the border. And other
Appreciate Barakallah Fiqh, Sheikh.
Just give me an example. I was shocked actually in the one at Hijaz. We were discussing with someone who made a tweet that it's okay to have such situation with Israel and things like that, because we have the evidence of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah and also this, because it's from Al-Thani, Dr. Faisal Al-Thani, and because the political situation dictates to us that to accept the base. He didn't say that, but he mentioned directly, clearly he wanted to justify that. Look at Sulh al-Hudaybiyah and look at the treaty between Muawiyah and the Roman. He admits that, because that's well established. No one can away. He made a treaty with the Roman, gave them jizya, so that they step back and he fight Ali ibn Abi Talib, which is an act of kufr clearly. Now the man is banned out. This is in the Roman documents, beside the Islamic documents. That will finish him completely. And what Abd Malik bin Marwan did, which everyone knows he did. They did the same, paid jizya until he get Ibn Zubayr. And he invoked that. So I answered him, and we discussed that. And then we're discussing various things. We came to Nuruddin Zanki, with the praise usually about Zanki, how good he was, and so on. And then during that, Abu Hashim Sultan Abdali, who was the Diwan Hijazi, Majid Diwan Hijazi, checked about his relation. There was he made some, also someone said he made treaty with the Romans against the Seljuqi, which are supposed to be Muslims. So he checked the issue and so on. And or the Seljuqi made the treatment to treaty with the Romans against him, or something like that. And then he checked up with Seljuqi. It appears that there were two fighting kings of the Seljuqi, all under the nominal Khilafah. And these the Khilafah was still there, the Abbasiyya was there, nominally. They said one of them was intercepted a woman who has been married to the son of the other king. Intercepted her, abducted her. She was married already. Because he's Hanafi, committed Sharia allegedly, he ordered her to make ridda, irtad al Islam. Cares Allah will do something. So the nikah will be fasted according to a point of view. I think Hanafi also. So nikah will fast. Then he ordered her to come back to Islam and marry her to her own son, his own son. That's the Seljuqi, one of the Seljuqi things. Which kind of governor is that? Tell me. Through history, they regard these as Muslim rulers. And somehow these are Islamic entities. They are not. Ayadan billah. They are committing clear acts of kufr and legislating, breaking the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a blatant, vigorous way, and allying with the kuffar and so on. So we have to review Islamic history again. Uthmani at the real inception, they were allies with the Roman against Muslims. That's well before they became a Khilafah. Well before, even when they got to Constantinople, it was not Khilafah yet. Khilafah came after, when they took Egypt, and the Salim the first, the conqueror, got the Khilafah handed over from the Abbasi ruler, and took the Burda of the Prophet and the usual things, artifacts we have them in top copy. It's a very messy history. But Sheikh Taqi, usually you find in the books and history, making the whitewashing this troublesome negative history. The only thing which is a bit make you a little bit feel a little bit better is that it was not as bad as the kings in Europe were doing. It didn't went to that extreme, or other kings everywhere in the world. So Islam restrained a little bit, but that's all what's there. But some of them are as bad as the worst Kafir kings. But this needs to be restudied again. If all your history and your study is based on that, this is actually can be justified and can be, it cannot be justified except by a big number of ignoring tons of hadith, ignoring the ayahs, ignoring deep analysis of the meaning of Tawheed and Shirk and Islam, ignoring the fundamental importance of granting everyone in the domain as much freedom as possible, no spying, no and so on, so everyone can express themselves freely, and then the ideas and the thoughts will interact, and then Islam will become dominant by intellectual capacity and capability. We have never had any need to convert people by force to Islam, nowhere, never happened. In Europe, it was mass conversion. All North Europe was converted by the sword. All these Baltic states, Lithuania, so on, they were fighting for hundreds of years against the Teutonic Knights.
Yes, I was going to mention that the Crusades did not stop at the Levant. They continued at the Baltics and Poland.
Yeah. And then Poland, before that, Poland also was converted by the sword. And they claim Islam became dominant by the sword. These people are master of lying and deceiving. So their history is much worse. So this Muslim entities and the Khilafah and so on, a bit better. But it's as bad, relatively as bad. And all the usual myths about the conquest of Bani Umayyah, of Sind and so on. All it's aggressive wars. Except Andalusia is not an aggressive war, but it's not an Islamic conquest. It was a deal between Tariq ibn Ziyad, who was at that moment a ruler there. Maybe he did it single-mindedly, or maybe he's just for power, with one of the kings there, that we fight against Rodriguez and cut his kingdom in parts. That's exactly what was being done. It's not an Islamic conquest. Some conquest you call them for Islam, but there was no war. It was peace, like Habasha. So but the best you call it a Umayyad conquest. Maybe not an aggressive war by using European measures. So everybody say it's an aggression. No, you are aggressing each other and killing each other and dividing kingdoms and distributing it and marrying the daughter of king like the king of Spain when he wrote to Elizabeth I, which was not a beauty, but he wanted to get England under his rule. So wrote her asking her for her hand to marry him. She knew he wanted to swallow Britain or England at that time. She said no. So he sent the Armada. If she agreed, Britain would have been part of Spain. That's all. They kings that own the people and the land and exchange between themselves. So the Caucasus of Spain, they cannot argue against the European army because it's according to deals between and the current Spanish scholarship agrees on that. That was not an Islamic, not was a conquest or violence. It was done by ourselves. They behaved the same way our kings have behaved, and we accepted that. So we should accept that. That's all what Bani Umayyah did. Oh, they made a conquest and so on. No, they made no conquest except these. One of them is aggressive war against Sind and China, absolutely unjustified. Hajjaj wanted some people who ran away there to get them and kill them, and the ruler said, no, they have asylum here. We cannot break our honor of our country this way. So he attacked him. And that's one in Andalusia is a deal between kings. To the hell with kings and their deals. So it's not an Islamic conquest. It's just a Umayyad conquest. A king apprehended another kingdom according to the usual habit of kings of that time. That's it. That's it. Unfortunately, it's not like the wars of the Sahaba and so on. It's really carrying Islam and not fighting anyone unless he's really initially aggressive and fighting Muslim and killing them, which applies for the Persian and for the Romans and their appendices. Anyway, this is a very checkered history, but so we need to do that job. It's being done now. In the late part of the 20th century, we do, I think, a good portion of that. And we are trying to persuade some good people of history who are historians to work on that. One of them is in Kuwait. I will not mention his name because he just came out of prison. So we'll be cautious, a little bit cautious. He is the one who checked the issue of Sind and so on and verified the reason for that. Historically, it's in the books, but you need to read it with another eye. Not that is the legitimate Khalifa. No. This is the tyrant. Most likely internally he's a kafir munafiq, Malik Marwan, and this is his vassal, Hajjaj. He's even as kafir as his boss, but his boss is even akfar. Because Al-Hajjaj is known to the one who attacked the Kaaba with Manjaniq. He refused to attack it initially. And I cannot attack when Zubair take him except if I do the Manjaniq. And they cannot do that. He said, do the Manjaniq. It's a very dark history. Checking that history, there's a good part of Tafhim al-Islam and reviving the Ummah. I think we have to get this mess out of the Islamic history and Islamic understanding. Then the people understand Islam really more comprehensively and they will be committed and willing to work in that direction. The Sahwa, Ikhwan Muslimin, Hizb did a good job in that direction. We have to complete that's I think, the way to go now. Don't expect Nusra from anywhere. Look at the Egyptian army. There's a bunch of military feudal lords. It's a military feudalism. In Europe, it was inherited feudalism based on tribal chieftains conquering and fighting and so on. The one who apprehended more land become a bigger. And the biggest one is the king. The next one will be the duke. And then the earl or in German called Markgraf. That's the lord which has a market city. And then a lord who has no market city. And then they come the lower nobility. The rest of Allah's creation are serfs, like Abid, owned by by feudal lord. And Egypt knows by jumping on power, the military, by the revolution, so-called revolution. This is just a coup d'etat of 1952. It's not a revolution. Revolution is something from the public. French Revolution, Iran Revolution, these are public revolutions. Good or bad, that's another issue. No, this is just few military people instigated by foreign intelligence, jumped on the king, kicked them out, and kicked Britain out, fine. And then these generals dug themselves there deep. From the rank of brigadier upwards, they have all the privileges and all the power. Even they're controlling industry, they're supervising it, and so on. It's a military feudalism. These people never give you a nusra. The same with Jordan, the army. Whole British construct. Until Hussein makes this piece of theater expelling because people were accusing Jordan, look, your army is headed by Glob Pasha, etc. And he was so beloved by the tribes. They're so ignorant in Jordan. How can you establish in such ignorant tribe? They were calling him affectionately Abu Jeffrey or something like that. They were treating them like slaves. The tribes are usually like Bedouins, especially in Jordan. They are badly educated. As one good aspect of the Wahhabi movement, they educated the tribes, even mutilated Tawheed and some religious commitment. But the extremism is that led them to their downfall. The tribes in Arabia, but in Jordan they're absolutely nil, no brain whatsoever. Absolutely ignorant what's going on in the world. But that's the army constructed by the British. You know how the British should. They don't choose anyone who smell like Islamic or just the most ignorant Bedouins. And then by Glob Pasha. Then when the pressure of Abdel Nasser, the campaign became big, Hussein needed to make a piece of theater, so he said Arabization of the army, kicking, sending Gulab Pasha into retirement and put the head of the army is now an Arab in the late 50s, early 60s. It's a very, very, very nasty situation with the militaries everywhere. The military in Saudi Arabia has no real power. They are fed, they have big bellies, they are not capable for fighting. Except the Air Force, which can bomb Yemen and so on, but can they face with America or Israel? No, they can't, and they don't have. And they don't want. I asked one was a remote relative from in-laws, actually. He was in Tabuk, by say, how we are dealing with the Israelis. We hear there's some Israeli incursion. Say, who told you this from time to time? So I said, from time to time, daily Israeli jets are flying over Tabuk. And we are ordered, don't even look at them. The Israeli come with boats near Tabuk and the Gulf of Aqaba. They land on they get the boat near to them, walk to the get their fish and grill the fish and enjoy themselves as if doing a holiday. And nobody even don't even look at them. Coast Guard doesn't even touch them. Say how? So what are you doing with this? Say I believe, and everyone for us believe that we cannot confront Israel. We don't have the means to record that. We don't have the courage. We are not interested. So he was transferred then to Al Kharj base. At that time, it was the major base of supply and logistics. And I asked him, how is this? So we have three groups there of military, the Saudis and the Americans, which are the bosses and controlling, and some Pakistanis. So you say the Saudis, they come drink tea and read the newspaper and go home, do nothing. The Americans are professional. They keep track of everything in and out, checklist, and so on. But the Pakistanis are idiots. They think they are serving and protecting the Haramain. See, I saw once one Pakistani general in the rank of Aqid, rank of colonel, not general, colonel. He was so caring about the base that when the cleaning people failed to do a proper cleaning of corner, he took the broom and cleaned by himself. Say, for Haramain. See, they are idiots. So we have the idiots of Pakistani believer. They're still much better than the Saudis and the American and the professional and the nothing. Say, we are nothing. They call them idiots because they are devoted. They believe they are doing this. They're not believing for. They have fooled them. The Pakistani leadership fooled them. Told them, we are going to protect Haramain. Motivation of them is like that. Really, they believe they're protecting Islam at Haramain. That's the currency they have been said. Some go because there's obviously extra money and things that's, but still the main motivation is that. And that's the reason when the conflict happened with Yemen, there was a fallout with Pakistan because what's his name? Well, in prison now, Imran Khan, yeah. I told the Saudis, the army, they believe they are protecting the Haramain, all of them. That's the reason they are there. Yes, there's some extra money and so on, some allowances extra. That's good. But that's the main motivation. Otherwise, they would not leave home because in Pakistan, the army is also well fed and well paid. Except for that, I cannot move them against Yemen. He checked, obviously, the general feeling. The general feeling is clear. We come here to protect the Haramain, not to attack anybody, especially Muslim countries. Either we protect the Haramain or we'll be in Pakistan defending against India. That's it. Not going to attack Yemen. And the Saudis became angry because they have been bribing or helping Pakistan for a long time. And that led to a certain conflict situation which persists partly until now. With Imran Khan and with the Pakistani army. But still there's some Pakistani army there, but it's only for protection. So that's the Saudi armies. Leave the Pakistani army. They maybe Nusra may come from faction of them, because of the issue with India and so on, make them more Islamic and more sensitive, but it's more mixed Islam with tribalism and nationalism. It's not really a good understanding. So they need tafhim am. Even the Pakistani people need tafhim am. But in Saudi Arabia, the army is hopeless. It's hopeless.
Yes. Professor, just suppose I was listening to a speech by Sheikh Ata Abu Rashta Rush just sent me the link. He's appealing to the Muslim armies.
Yeah, that's the Hizb ut-Tahrir stuck for since any time.
Yes, it's a new speech. You know, a few
Yeah,
days
yeah.
ago, he's still appealing for the
He's
Muslim
stuck with
armies.
that. If he doesn't stuck with that, his Hizb ut-Tahrir is gone. The remaining of Hizb will be gone. He will be gone. Is he just for power to be leader of Hizb, or he believes in that from his heart? We are not going to analyze that. Leave that to Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah. But this is the wrong approach, because he has the wrong philosophy of how to establish Islamic State. That's not the correct way. Because the misunderstanding of Sheikh Taqi Abu Talib al-Nusr. He thought it to establish a state. So stage one, تثقيف المركز, until you have a نخبة or elite which are capable of carrying da'wah and so on. And even تثقيف مركز and Hizb is not the one which they can become community leader and can move the masses. They have some tarkeez in politics and few issues about the state and so on. But the issue of tabanni used is so extreme that they became limited. We tried to do something in Saudi Arabia, in Najd, when I was there in the 80s. And so on, when we started after Jayman and so on, we could do a little bit of the secret working and things like that. And they found the Shabab there, very ancient Shabab and so on, who are working in various places and so on. They could not take that. How can you take leadership? Because Sheikh Taqi has the following adoption. We are not a fiqh school. We are not Darawish. We are not Mufti. We are not that. We are political campaigner. But the people expect someone campaigning based on Islam to be having some Islamic knowledge. So they ask you about issues of ibadah, issues of things like that. So I tried to force the Shabab there, with Uthman Bakhash was the leader, the Amir at that time, to persuade them. She said, you have to read some fiqh book at least. Only the books of Hizb is no way. At least read the Mughni, or read some concise book of fiqh and some aqidah, and we improve on it. So you can interact with the people and answer their question, because they regard you. If you want them to trust me, then the mashayikh, or most of them are Munafiq until Abu al-Saud, you have to take their leadership. And the people will not look at you unless they know you have some Islamic scholarship, capability to giving fiqh issues and things. So they come to you instead to the others. His policy was in the 50s and 60s. No, go to your mashayikh, go to your sheikh, ask him about that. Secularism in reverse. It doesn't work this way. So some of them started, but they could not do any penetration, because the other movements like Sururi, like Ikhwan and so on, adopted, and they were reading in these areas. They know what's going on. The Shabab of Hizb are nil in all these areas. Hizb did not need to adopt, but should have encouraged reading in these areas. Encourage, for example, Tajdeed Quran, Hifz Quran. Just Hizb advice, you should read Quran, should remind you with the relationship with Allah. But it's only Ramadan and things like that, not encouraging. Because imagine you are a good Quran reader. You will have fellowship for you because you are a good Quran reader. So how can you educate the masses and lead them without being her? Also, the Hizb shot himself in the foot in the areas which they say, no, zakah is only to the Khalifa. We don't collect zakah. So what the Muslims will do, they will go and give it to people who are having not enough intellectualism and understanding what's going on with the world political, like Muslim Brotherhood, or imams, or corrupt people, and so on. That's what the zakah is being done. And so on. They did not do anything in the society at the time of the public tafhim. You have to do more activity than just distributing leaflets and tafhim about khilafah, about state. You have to engage with other issues, clean other issues, develop them further. Was not happening. So we have to do that. That's it. The focus will be now tafhim al-Islam for the Muslimin, but also review of understanding of Islam based on a critical view of the history of starting with Muawiyah. Depending what you achieve is Munafiq, Kafir, not Kafir, that's not the issue. He's a violation of the Islamic ruling system, catastrophic violation. That's the most important thing. What is the original Islamic ruling system? And if I develop that is justifying the current ruler. Try to make him within the frame of Islam generally, as much as you can. As much as you can as a scholar, especially respected scholars. That's it. We have to go back to the sources. In time past, it may have not been feasible. Most things were makhtut, still handwritten. Now almost everything is in Shamila in the internet and has been edited and re-edited. Plenty is still to be dug out, but what's already there, but needs scanning with the intention to get everything about the responsibility of the everything about how to fight rulers or not to fight, everything about all these, check all these hadith about obedience, because half of them or 2/3 of them are fabricated or bad or have a bad sentence. We have to do that. Then you can build on clean. And you have to get up the obsession of some people discuss with Sheikh Taqi why you refer to Khilafah until 1924. We know that they introduced bad laws and so on since the middle of the 1850 of the time Abdul Majid. They said, yeah, but there was fatwa and so on. And if we say Islamic model is only the Khilafah Rashida, this will be so removed from the people will not move. But the Khilafah, third Khilafah, which is protecting some areas of Muslim world until it collapsed, is a recent plan, and we can motivate the people to strive for that. It is practically, theoretically it looks good. If you have a near-resistant model, it's in our time, we can do it. But if we do it the way Uthmani do it, that's what Erdogan is doing. Intihaziyya, aligning with this and aligning with this. Uthmani were the last 100, 150 years aligning with this, against this. Well, nothing to do with Islam, really. And making the disease deeper and deeper. Instead of curing the disease internally, they were unable to cure the disease. The disease is deep internally. They were unable. But Sheikh Taqi wanted quick solution. He thought a recent model that people still remember. At the time, the Khilafah was 24 gone, and the Hizb was prospering and working well in the 50-something. That's only 30 years. All elderly generation remember. Many of us remember that Fathi Zahra Rahmatullah died just 10 years ago, or 80 years old. His father was going from Istanbul to Mecca on horseback. He's from the Uthmani military. No visas, nothing, one land. They said, remember that. There was no such speaker yet. But now it is as remote as the Khilafah Rashid. Now the Khilafah Rashid as a model is becoming more current. We should bring that to the people's mind, but in a structured way, not only historical, but also what are ruling, what the legislation behind that. This is not optional, it's fundamental. It has to be done now. So that's the way now. I've heard the brother who asked, it's the only way now. This phase of Tafhim al-Islam, public education, but to widen it, both vertical and horizontal, and down deep in the foundation. Tafhim al-Islam as completed in Quran and Sunnah, by putting everything together, which shall be scattered. Because many of these issues, how did the classical scholar miss them? Partly, obviously, intentionally, because many of these are traitors with the government. Let's leave these out. But the others, by scattering them and not mentioning them. Because some of them will lead to prosecution, and so it's scattered everywhere. It's not in that. And the main books, which have been Bukhari, Muslim, and so on, written like in the 3rd century, the evil situation of the governments had already been well established, and nobody dares confronting unless he faces the sword. So the hadith about the rulers and so on are very little late. Very few here and there in the major books. And the people concentrated, and fuqaha even concentrated on what they have already from previous generation of hadith, even some of them faulty, some of them stinks even, and so on, and they stuck to it. Nobody bothered really, especially in ruling and related history, to check all of these in a consistent way and a comprehensive way, which have been quite difficult, but still possible. But as you leave that, now it's possible for us, easy. It has to be done. And there's no reason for, there's no Khalifa, no one who can claim really convincing that he's applying Islam. Even if he does that in his domain by blubbery and so on, but it's clear, everyone knows that. Saudi claim nobody accept, Pakistani claim nobody accept, and so on. It's just nominal by name. So this is now the time to work, getting the culture cleaned from the mess. The culture itself has to be cleaned. The adoption itself has to improve. In addition, the ways and means must be developed further. A movement must be capable of offering whatever services available for, it can be given to the people before the state is established, or establish itself, or Allah establish it, tamkeen, to serve the people, especially outside the Islamic domain, like in Britain. We should be able to get the people, organize the people, zakah, organize schools and things like that to protect Islamic identity. But it needs maybe writing as well. We have bits of beers scattered here and there. Maybe one day we'll.
What I have found, Sheikh, what I've found is when people leave the Hizb, they become much more effective.
Yeah.
Because you know, I can speak about this for hours, honestly, because ultimately it's kind of like living in a fantasy world where you think, because I've had this conversation with so many people before, even before it's like when Muhajirun, before Muhajirun went mental, when they were formulating it, they had these discussions that for them they had the mentality that just repeating Khilafah is going to somehow magically, you know, to the extent that this is how cliquey they become. That if you imagine you gave everything you had in Sadaqah, you established 5,000 schools. A person in HT giving out a leaflet is better than you because you haven't done the work towards a Khilafah. One of the guys that I put on the Zoom with you, you know, the private times when we had the Zooms. One of them had this exact same mentality, which I had spoken to him before. It's a parallel world, and the other thing is how they consider the fact that all this stuff about overemphasis of khilaf is because, again, as I give the analogy of the leaky boat, they think that you're doing the shore is very close to us, so we're on the brink. So if you're in a leaky boat, you're probably just going to paddle very fast because you can see the shore, but they haven't realized they're in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
And the other thing is again, I think there's a valid point that he was heavily influenced by communist.
Also, another problem: not only leaky boat, the leak is in the middle of the ocean. The leak is there definitely, but it's minor than they think. While the engine is having major faults. That's the problem. The engine is that what's the theory? What is the aspiration? What is the target?
Yeah, and the entire thing about the Nusra in the fact that, you know, it can easily ease, even if they were to take power. The fact that you have the mentality that you're going to have imposition of rule via Nusra, that's problematic as well, because you're not going to have the Shura. Yeah, or you know, they may institute it, you know, after taking power. But
it's by necessity. Generally, it will fail. The only thing with coup d'etat could be if you have an Islamic system, like even the ideal on the time of Salam, which was in Yemen under his government, and then Aswad al-Ansi comes, and the Prophet wrote to them, "You have to get rid of this man by any means, including military activity." That's essentially coup d'etat. That's what they did. But this is only after he came to a society already Islamic and already supporting Islam, and the leadership will say what to do now to prevent him from sitting there forever. That's it. That's a different situation. The system changed from Islamic to non-Islamic by a coup or by external invasion, and this applies for external invasion. If a kafir invade an Islamic domain, then the issue is clear. He must be expelled. Move every force against him. People, armies, everything. Then you think about that by re-establishing Islam again, because Islam has been raised from existence by the invasion of a kafir and controlling the domain, like it happened in Iraq and so on. Then the first command is getting rid of the kafir, fighting him.
I think practically the other thing is your work on, because when I met, I spoke to Hamza Zoltzis as well after one of the events, and I mentioned to him about Mana Nusra and the fact that Mana Nusra, this emphasis on dawah, and you know the Nusra was for the dawah. He is immediately pricked up, which is because putting the fact that the dawah itself is of importance, because ultimately for Hizb, the dawah towards Khilafah, to the extent that in the early days of Muhajirun, you know, when you were working with OBM, the whole entire episode was because the Hizb stopped the dawah, because they said the dawah, and there's an entire back and forth about the IO 3104 where they said that they even got to the extent say this is the job of the state to give dawah, and one of the members even said it's haram to give dawah outside.
Sheikh that the way giving dawah to single and going to their places is not the Islamic way. The Islamic way is to conquest and so on. This is also again mistake. All these
so the point is that when people remove these shackles, they become more effective. To be honest, it's a shame. I mean, look, there's plenty of, I regularly share his material on our.
But the problem, they probably follow the philosophy of Shafi'i, mostly Sheikh Taqi, in matter of war and peace and so on. which is simply not correct.
But so the point is that when people leave, they become more effective, because if you start to look locally, and there's so many people out there who are doing excellent work, and they used to be in a hizb. Hamza Zortzis, Jalal from Thinking Muslim, all these guys, and even some people who are kind of, probably maybe still be within, but they make excellent material because they're thinking outside of the just repeating khilafah every time. One of my cousins who was on one of the Zooms, he made an excellent joke where he says that
the one who is stuck until now because they believe it's an obligation. That's the problem. And
yeah, I mean, even that's
that has to be corrected. The foundation to correct it and carry then a new organization will work then differently. No need to separate and demolish the organization to work in the community. They will be the one working in the community the correct way. And they will understand the ayah. Besides, the Talib al-Nusra is only for asylum for the da'wah. They understand how the Prophet behaved until the writing the Sahih al-Madinah. And then they will understand the meaning of the ayah. الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر. أمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر meaning accounting the rulers. The rulers will be from them. But who will be the tamkeen? The one we establish on earth. Then they will establish salah, iqamah. Establish the system of salah, not just pray. You pray even if you are not established as a single Muslim. And ataw zakat, it will be organized from the state and not society. It will be it will be a community work. It's not an individual. So if you're an individual living in America, you have to count your money and give zakat. There's no escape. There's no doubt about that. The zakat is not fallen away, but it's not established yet as a system. And then Amr al-Munkar is very clear. There are accountable. Any ruler, any authority must be accounted. They must be politically active, watching like a hawk for the one in authority, because authority is corrupting, according to tons of ahadith. While the philosophy of Mawardi and so on is the one in charge has to be trusted, and if he gives the power to someone else, we must trust him. That's the opposite. The Islamic position is the completely opposite. It's completely opposite. That power is corruption, and anyone who has authority over a certain number of people, some hadith say 3, some hadith say 10. That's the maximum. Will come Yawm al-Qiyamah with his hand chained to his neck. He is guilty until proven innocent because he was head of 10. And then only justice will release him, and any injustice will destroy him. So this is so many hadith. The general philosophy, no, Imam must be trusted, you give bay'ah and so on. No, it's not true. He must be distrusted. You must say, clarify why you're doing that. This concept is not in anybody's mind. The Khilafah is essentially they adopted, they followed the Persian and the Roman in the matter of Khilafah, turning it in really a mulk, and they're the king is somehow have the divine right. Islamists never said that. Islamic fuqaha never said that he has a divine right. No doubt about that. That's definitely would be kufr sarih. That's not to that extreme, but de facto, it was almost like that. And all these things, this has to be what is a system. How it's established, you educate the people, you do your duty as a single person until the domain you get it. But if the domain all Muslims, then you need tafheem. But they would understand Islam with their obligation. Your obligation is to obey Allah and His Messenger, and establish your prayer and so on, and work in that direction. And know that it is, if Allah gives you the gift, you are now a majority. Because you are a majority, now it's for kifaya on you to take power. You should not leave tyrants in place. But they have to understand that if you want the majority in a Muslim country, like in Pakistan, they have to educate to the literacy, allowing this kind of rulers who rule with Allah, allow the kuffar. It's not permissible. You are committing haram because you have a power now. How you say we don't have tamkeen? You have. You are the majority. The majority is by necessity of the universe and law of the universe. Simply go in a general strike for a few days. The regime will collapse. No regime will survive a general strike everywhere. If it is done with a thought what to do exactly. We are striking until you get out. No army will be able to break a general strike if it's that. But for that, you have to have tafheem. You have to have a majority, a substantial majority. Not everyone, but a substantial majority complying. That is very peaceful. Just stay home. But they're going to work with machine gun taking you out to work is not possible, for example. But there has to be understanding. That is your duty now because a majority. But if they are not majority like here in England, Forget about that. Protect your identity, increase the number of Muslims. Not only by procreation and having more kids, but also by getting people, inviting people to Islam. And there's an enormous reward for that. If you save one person, is better for you than the whole dunya. And then one day, if it's become a majority, if Allah decides, historically we don't support it, then I was asked by journalists, say, do you want to apply Sharia Negro? I say, we want the majority of English people to convert to Islam. When the majority convert, who are you to prevent them from applying Sharia? He shut up immediately. He cannot. He has no argument. Who told you are applying Sharia as a minority against other people? No. We apply Sharia to individuals on ourselves, on our communities as much as we can. And you do your filth by yourself. That's the reason I advocate. Don't get involved in their politics and their elections. Except in very rare occasions. Let the brothers and sisters remember to read voting for kufr is kufr again. That's for almost 25 years. It's still as valid as that. Maybe I can make it better or more structured in the future. But before the next election, inshallah, we review it and do it a little bit more structured based on the experiences of time. But all experience until now shows that's it. Focus on your identity. Build yourself. And we are not allowed to be like the Jews, penetrate the government and sneak in the back and stab in the back. That's big haram. We should not do that. Our job is to invite people one by one to Islam, to save them for Yawm al-Qiyamah and become member of the community. That's our job. If we are a minority or a single person, no other jobs, no khilafah, no nonsense. If you are a majority Muslim country, because we have a situation not like the Prophet in Mecca, there was no Muslim there, no majority yet. And no power. That's the reason they needed to go somewhere where they have protection. And then in the protection, they grew to power by Islam spreading and taking the dominant position in the society. And then the state was established on the occasion of a certain thing, like you read the Sahifat al-Madinah. The occasion gave itself. The Prophet invited the people there and the tribes and the foreigners, the Jews and so on, as other entities, invited them to make a constitution, which is like a federation and a confederation at the same time. No Muslim knows that. The Hizb, the Islamic State, is a unity state, not even a federation, let alone confederation. There's no concept of that. Completely no concept. Completely no concept, only Mawardi and so on. That has to be cleaned first. If it's cleaned towards, at least in the skeleton way, then people can work. A Muslim majority, if we get the people to the majority willing to go a general strike, this current government is evil. We are not willing to accept it. We are not going to work until you resign and get lost. And we have already the people qualified and ready to take over. But we have already a majority in the country, in Pakistan, but the majority which have these ideas, not just a majority of simple-minded Muslims who do not know, cannot distinguish between the nose of the donkey from its tail, like a majority of Muslim Pakistan. Poor guys. Even the majority of Mawlanas go to the masajid, see the Khutab Jum'ah, they read in Arabic, they don't know what they are reading. Then the way go together. Stuck in culture and so on, essentially, barely. They have to become more in the public. And if in the public, the majority become at least aware about these and responsibility that now you are now the majority physically, now the obligation is on you now. Because you suppose you have tamkeen, your numbers give you tamkeen, exercise it. Otherwise you have failed. Because Allah said, when we establish him on earth, you are already established now. Do it, as the ayah said. Otherwise you are sinful. And I did not say only commanding good and forbidding evil, so say only issue the state, establish salah and zakah. They're already musallin, but no. Then the system of salah will be established. The timetables will be adjusted with salah. The calendar of the adjusted to Ramadan and all these things. The established system of salah, same with life. The same with the zakah. There will be institution collecting it, auditing properly, applied to all kinds of wealth properly. The ijtihad about ijtihad, because the types mentioned in the hadith and so on, that would be the main types of money in Arabia. Minor things were forgiven. And the Prophet said, "Afawtu an kada," keep it, but give me this and this and this. meaning in every wealth, but another wealth, you can levy zakat on it, 2.5% on the valuation of it, and so on. You need also ijtihad for that to be ready now. There's no easy way. And if it's a matter, people are struggling to get the most of Hizb because they think they are sinful if they're not working. That's what the Hizb have persuaded the people to believe. It's good. But really, it's wrong. Persuading, they thought you are sinful doing something which is not doable. But what's doable is applying Islam on yourself, committing it, and protecting your family, and so on, protecting your community, and educating Muslims. That's doable. And when you are a majority, then your obligation is clear. To guide the people, direct them, do it in the least offensive and bloodshedding way. As I said, just a general strike to remove a government will work. But for that, you have to have mass education about the basic simple principles. The details, the one who have the thorough education, the members of the organization work with that, or with other organization which may have some different adoption. So you can have, in the Majlis Shura, you can bring your adoption and we discuss the fiqh details. But the general line must be clear. The general line must be clear. And I think in that general line, in this way, Muslim will become clear. In the moment, obviously, Hizb and Muhajirun as an offshoot, and also Madkhali and Wahhabi, and also, they will not join in that. So we have to do it in our own. But their next generation will recognize they will break. They will recognize they will break. So it may, unfortunately, to be like that. And the rest of Muslims, who are the majority, they are just deactivated. They're completely deactivated. The real power which they have is not activated. And they're not aware about the real power. Because they were not made aware. Even Hizb did not make them aware. So that's it. So
okay,
it's more complex and simpler than people thought. But it's, to get from that what the people have accumulated over 14 centuries to back what in Mecca in a real view, and what was in Habasha for centuries. There was no Khilafah movement, nothing. Ruled by Christian. Sudan, for example, this current Sudan. You will be surprised that the ruler of the center of Sudan, Khartoum, it was not exactly the shape, but roughly the rulers were paying jizya to the Muslims in Egypt and whatever who was ruling Egypt at the time. For how long do you think from the time of Islamic conquest? From the 7th century Anno Domini, from 650, 670 تقريبا, until, but the kings were the ruling was were Christian, but everything was peaceful and Muslims were growing and growing. The rulership was in the hand of Christian until 15 plus 700 years. Then Muslim became majority. I don't know what's the conflict there, and if there's a fight or no fight was done properly, because that time is not really the best of time with Islamic intellectualism. 5 centuries ago, we were already declining. I don't think the Muslims in Sudan were more advanced than other Muslims and so on. But it was peaceful. There was no problem. It was smoothly for centuries. And the Muslims are from the best Muslims we have in the Muslim world. And their culture is even more closer to Islamic culture than, for example, possibly the culture of Pakistan and so on. Because they're barely any pagans there. It's Christian, no, they're not far away. They're just an issue of Isa and divinity. Few issues, really. There's no contamination. Until now, the Sudanese are from the best Muslim show peoples anywhere in the world. In kindness and warmness and spirituality of Islam in them is very, very well expressed and so on. So it may take centuries sometimes in one place. But if it's educated properly, it can be less. And nowadays with the social media and the world interconnected and all people becoming literate. In that time, most people are illiterate. And if their village is far away, good if they just pray and so on. They know what's going on. But now, the world is connected at the time of people now. Now it should be much faster. Obviously, there will be persecution. They try to control the internet. There will be a fight. It will never be easy, completely smooth sailing. There will be conflict in this direction, but I think they will fail. The enemies of Islam, definitely. هذا الحديث الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, the best of my ummah is the beginning, his time, and the last. In between, it is muddy. It's clouded. It's not pure water. So the muddy time is continuing. The muddy from Muawiyah, but mudding started, at least in the ruling level, and even other things. Even Salah was deformed and messed up in the time of Abdul Malik Marwan and so on. Even Salah, someone complained at that time. Anas of Malik was alive that complaining. The ruling is gone, but even Salah, the last of your deen will be gone is Salah. Even this Salah, I cannot recognize. And the mudding is continuing like that until now. But it's getting a bit clearing bit by bit. Now, common Muslim, even they know what's going on about Islam and Muslim in the world much better than 2 centuries ago, or 1.5 centuries. 1.5 centuries, the situation was terrible, catastrophic. Bottoming with the beginning, with the Khilafah Uthmani become completely secular and nationalistic and vicious. 1850. And then there was struggle going back and forth until the fall of the nominal Khilafah, which is gone really. And then we're starting to recover in mass ways, but slowly, because Tafhim al-Islam was not done, and Fahm al-Islam, and reviewing it and overcoming that history and recognizing it's muddy. If you carry it's muddy, there will be a big job on you, the one who recognizes that, is to remove the mud. I mean, you have to go to the sources and develop the theories anew. But most human beings are not qualified, and others are lazy to do that. They prefer to negotiate what the scholars in time past. And majority of graduates of universities, Azhar and so on in school, are just negotiating. Nobody had really the willingness to go. Sheikh Taqi did break in various areas, no doubt about that. Issues of election, women being elected and electable and all these things. At the time, most of them made a war against him for that issue. He wants a woman in parliament. And ultimately, in time Muhammad Murza Rahmatullah alayh, his vice president was a woman, and she was Christian even. Without changing the culture and make it public everywhere, where the changes are, is just pragmatical, or do you believe in that? What's the justification? There's justification, there's no problem with that. But you have to do some work. They didn't do. Before he died, Qaradawi, he admitted to someone that since 20 years, he's becoming more convinced that stoning has been abrogated. But he did not dare saying it anywhere. Imagine. And he's the main mufti and the main, chief ideologist. Like the Communist Party, they have a chief ideologist. I remember in our German time, Mikhail Suslov was the chief ideologist. So I remember that very well. Chef ideologa in German, Mikhail Suslov. So he's the Mikhail Suslov of the Muslim Brotherhood. They refer always to him. 20 years he doesn't dare working with that and publishing. Which kind of leadership we have? This is tragical. Anyway, the long sermon. Maybe we can cut that if someone asks about the methodology. We can cut that. Comments about methodology to establish Khilafah, something like that. But really, it's a painful situation. But the job is clear now. Try to review the Islamic history, clean it, remove the holiness about it. It's not holy. It's a bad history. Since Muawiyah is a bad history, or the last few days of Hassan going on when he surrendered. Until now, it is a bad history. There are some better times, some lower time, but all of them are far, far below. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz a little bit close to the Khilafah Rashid, but it's not Khalifa Rashid because he did not receive it by bay'ah. Yes, the people accepted later, so we can regard that's the de facto bay'ah, but he could not enforce the system of Shura. And Bani Umayyah killed him really. Got rid of him right away. And everything collapsed back. there was attempt by Yazid, they call Naqis, Yazid, the son of Al-Walid, the tyrant Al-Walid al-Malik, the most vicious tyrant of them, almost the most vicious, and the other Walid ibn Yazid, the next tyrant. This Yazid ibn Al-Walid al-Malik was as good or even better than Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Insisted in shura, got bay'ah and so on, and started making change, but they could not tolerate that by Umayyah and their armies and their scholars. So he stayed only 6 to 8 months and then got killed. Then the Abbasi came with an obscure slogan, giving bay'ah to the acceptable, the willing and acceptable of, without mentioning a name, of the house of Muhammad. This is a bad slogan. Restricting bay'ah and imamah in the house of Muhammad, which have no evidence. Shia claim otherwise, but this is blatant history refutes that completely, utterly and completely. And also Nusus, not Shari, no doubt about that. But that's not a matter discussion of Shia now. That slogan was moving the people because when Muhammad was prosecuted and killed by the Bani Umayyah in scores in a vicious way, so it was very emotional. Exactly like Khilafah and removing the sin from your neck with Hizb al-Tahrir. So they followed the Abbasi, but the Abbasi, when they took the power, they turned into tyrants like the previous before them because Tafhim was not there and the theory was not corrected. The movement was not based on the slogan itself, it reflects a bad theory. And then since then, it's like that up and down. The time of Ma'mun, maybe a better time, intellectualism and so on, and philosophical and so on, scholarship. Ma'mun maybe thinking out of the box a little bit, maybe also injustice, I think, as good as Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, although he has been maligned by the follower Ahmad ibn Hanbal because the issue of so-called Khalq al-Quran, which is an issue, but it, muddy never went away. Became more muddy sometimes, less muddy sometimes, more muddy sometimes, less muddy sometimes, until we have now complete collapse of any governance of Islam or any relevance. And despite all that, it's much better than the governance of other government and rulers all over the world as well in outside Islamic domain. That's a little bit of comfort, but it's not really a full comfort. So we have to go back to that normative time. Prophet and Khulafa Rashidin. See what was the ruling system, what is enacted there, which mistakes are made there. Also, some mistakes have been made there.
Okay, inshallah. Should we call it a day?
Okay. There. I think we are very late. What's the time now?
11:37.
11:37 is too much for the time. Yalla khair. يلا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وتصبحون على خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.